Chapter 482. Although the sea dragon clone was above the magma, it wasn't affected by the magma at all. On the contrary, it was full of oppression. The python of hell couldn't help but feel some fear in its heart. However, this fear not only didn't make it recover, but also made it a little angry. On this planet, it was the absolute king. It wouldn't allow another existence stronger than itself to appear. Fortunately, it could feel that although this creature was powerful, its aura was only that of a strong level 8 mutated beast. It was 2 levels lower than itself. Thinking of this, it suddenly raised its head. It roared to the sky. In the next moment, a stream of magma spurted out. It attacked the sea dragon clone. However, the sea dragon clone's figure flashed and disappeared in an instant. When it reappeared, it was already behind the python of hell. The python of hell was shocked. The spatial restrictions within the range of its magma had no effect on this creature at all. The sea dragon clone didn't wait for the python of hell to react and slashed at the back of the python of hell. Swish, the giant claw slashed, and a huge crack hundreds of meters long and about 20 meters wide suddenly appeared on the back of the python of hell. Puff, 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 in this huge crack, boiling magma suddenly rolled out. The python of hell immediately let out a miserable roar. At the same time, its body rolled, trying to grab the sea dragon clone. However, the sea dragon clone was extremely agile. It quickly circled around the python of hell several times in a row. At the same time, it spat out a bluish-white dragon breath from its mouth. This bluish-white dragon breath was directly sprayed at the wound on the python of hell's back. Boom, the bluish-white dragon breath instantly entered the huge wound. At this moment, the magma in the python of hell's body was extinguished at an extremely fast speed and was frozen. One had to know that the python of hell's body was 5,000 meters long, which showed how much magma there was in its body. However, as soon as the sea dragon clone's dragon breath was released, all the magma within its 5,000-meter-long body was extinguished. In a very short period of time, it was all frozen. At this moment, Wuxia's dragon will moved. Whoosh, the python of hell's body, which was frozen for 5,000 meters, suddenly shattered with a bang. It scattered all over the ground. In the distance, the few survivors who saw this were extremely shocked. The giant python, which was more than 5,000 meters long, died in less than a minute after it had appeared. It was true that the more handsome one's appearance, the faster one's death. Wuxia nodded at this moment. The combat strength of the sea dragon clone was far beyond his imagination. No one's will, who was 2 levels higher than him. However, although this was unexpected, it was also reasonable. Although the sea dragon clone wasn't a real dragon, its skills were basically the same as Wuxia's. Dragon breath's dragon breath as SS. Moreover, the profound ice dragon breath it spat out was the breath of a real dragon. Python of the python of hell was an ordinary creature SS. Of the python of SSTT of the S of the ST, TTMO however, used his dragon will to scan the area. Bang 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 bang, the TAS for Wuxia's kill points, they soared once again. In the end, his kill points stopped at more than 1.5 billion. At this time, with him as the center, a circle of death had formed within a radius of 50 kilometers. All of the snake tribe members within this area had already exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Wuxia took one last look at this place, then turned and entered the teleportation hall. The remaining survivors made up about 1/3 of the total number of people. Seeing this, they hurriedly followed him into the teleportation hall. In the teleportation hall, they all kept a distance from Wuxia. They were afraid that if they were careless and made this powerhouse unhappy, they would not even know how they died. A moment later, Wuxia arrived at Hunting Island number 20. The owner of Hunting Island number 20 had already seen what happened on the python of hell star on the surveillance screen. He saw the snake disaster on the python of hell star with his own eyes. He saw the base being breached. He saw the disciples who went to the python of hell star suffering heavy casualties. He was already in despair. One must know that these disciples were the disciples of the top forces on the continent. Although they had signed a life and death contract before going to the Python of Hell Star. If anything happened to them on the Python of Hell Star, it would have nothing to do with Hunting Island number 20. However, these big sects were often very domineering. If something happened to their disciples, they would not care about the contract. Moreover, if they were out in the wild, it would still make sense. However, if something happened in the base, Hunting Island number 20 would have a lot to do with it. Therefore, he had been praying that someone could bring these people back. Even if they could not bring all of them back, at least some of them would do. Fortunately, he saw Mo Shi's powerful attack later. He destroyed all the snakes. Although he could not save everyone, he saved 1/3 of them. This was already a blessing in disguise for him. Therefore, he immediately came to the teleportation hall of Hunting Island number 20. When Mo Shi walked out, he bowed deeply to Mo Shi. He said, "Mr. Mo, thank you. You are the benefactor of Hunting Island number 20. Mo Shi nodded and did not say much. He said again, "Mr. Mo, if you need my help in the future, just let me know. Hunting Island number 20 will not refuse." Mo Shi still only nodded. At this time, the island master of Hunting Island number 20 had the intention to get close to Mo Shi. Obviously, Mo Shi was the person who destroyed the entire dragon clan. With such terrifying strength, it was inevitable that he could easily crush any powerhouse on the continent. If he could get close to such a person, no matter what he did in the future, it would be smooth sailing. However, his idea was destined to fail. Mo Shi did not give him a chance to get close to him. He directly teleported away and left Hunting Island number 20. The island master of Hunting Island number 20 was slightly stunned. Then, he smiled bitterly and shook his head helplessly. Were all powerful people so cold and aloof? However, although the other party did not pay much attention to him, he did not complain at all. Firstly, he did not dare. Secondly, the other party had helped him save 1/3 of the experiencers. It could be said that he was indebted to Mo Shi, so how could he possibly blame him? At the same time, those people who were saved by Mo Shi also engraved Mo Shi's face in their minds. After they returned, they must report this to the higher-ups in the sect as soon as possible. They must remind all the disciples in the sect not to offend this person if they met him in the future. Chapter 483. After Mo Shi returned to Hunting Island number 1, he began his leisurely life again. This time, it was truly leisurely. The sea dragon clone's strength could already kill a level 10 mutant beast. This meant that Mo Shi was already the strongest existence on the Flaming Continent. In the entire Flaming Continent, he was the peak of combat strength. In the entire Flaming Continent, no one could threaten him with combat strength alone. Therefore, he was qualified to rest for a while. As for his next stop after resting, he had already thought about it. He would go to Hunting Island number 22 or even Hunting Island number 23. There were many strong mutant wild beasts there. Now, every time he killed a strong mutant beast, he would get 10 kill points. Therefore, it was the most cost-effective to go there. Just as Mo Shi was resting, his deeds had already spread among the powerful sects on the Flaming Continent. The strongest sect on the Flaming Continent, the Flaming Origin Ancient Sect. In the meeting hall, 5 disciples were standing at the center. On the left and right sides of the hall were the elders of the sect. On the main seat sat the sect master who had been in seclusion for a long time and had just come out. All of them were looking up at a 3-dimensional projection in the center of the hall. This projection was Mo Shi. This was drawn by the previous artist according to the descriptions of the disciples and made into a 3-dimensional image. "Sect master, this is what happened," a disciple said. The whole hall was silent for a moment. An elder finally said, "Sect master, based on the current situation, we should try our best to link this Mr. Mo to the mysterious expert who slaughtered the entire dragon clan." Another elder nodded. "Indeed. This Mr. Mo is very likely the person who slaughtered the entire dragon clan. Based on this, We should try our best to be careful of this Mr. Mo. If we can befriend him, then we should. If we can't, try your best to tell the disciples not to provoke this Mr. Mo. The sect master pondered for a moment and nodded. Send this three-dimensional image to all the disciples and tell them to avoid this person in the future. Try not to provoke him. If they provoke him, they will bear the consequences. The sect won't stand up for them. When the 5 disciples below heard this, they were all stunned. In the entire Flaming Continent, the Flaming Origin Ancient Sect was known as the top ancient sect. It was a sect that had been passed down since the era of the Great Dragons and had been passed down for tens of thousands of years. In other words, the Dragon clan was the only one who could suppress them. However, the Dragon tribe had always been residing in the Dragon Valley and had no intention of expanding outwards. That was why the Ancient Flame sect was known as the #1 sect on the Flaming Dawn continent. As such, no one on the Flaming Dawn continent dared to provoke them. On the other hand, if the disciples of the Ancient Flame sect were to cause trouble outside, the people of the other forces could only bear with it. Moreover, the flame-beginning ancient sect was famous for being protective. If their disciples were bullied, they would stand up for them. If their disciples bullied others, they would still stand up for them. Because of this, the Flame Dawn ancient sect was secretly known as the Protective Sect. But today, the sect master had passed down an order: if you provoke this person, you will have to bear the consequences. The sect wouldn't stand up for these disciples. How could they not be surprised? But thinking about it, it made sense. In the face of an existence that could easily slaughter the Dragon Valley, the Ancient Flame sect had no choice but to retreat. If that ancestor didn't come to provoke them, they would be lucky enough to have smoke rising from their ancestral graves. How could they dare to provoke others? Yes. 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 The 5 disciples cupped their fists in response. At the same time, the second-ranked Ancient Dragon sect had also passed Imo Shi's portrait to all their disciples. At the same time, they passed down an order: all disciples were not to provoke this person. Those who disobeyed would have to bear the consequences. The third-ranked Mystic Moon sect had also passed Imo Shi's portrait to all their disciples. At the same time, they passed down an order: all disciples were not to provoke this person. Those who disobeyed would be expelled from the sect. Among the top 50 sects, half of them had passed down such an order. At the same time, these sects forbade their disciples from spreading this news. If they caused the displeasure of an expert, then it wouldn't be a personal matter. There was a high chance that their sect would be directly destroyed. At this moment, Imo Shi didn't know any of this. Now that he was theoretically the strongest person on the Flaming Dawn continent, he could relax in peace. He planned to give himself a 3-month vacation. After 3 months, he would go to the 21st or 22nd hunting island. During the vacation, he couldn't always stay on the island. Now that he was theoretically the strongest person on the Flaming Dawn continent, of course he had to take him around and admire the various wonders of the Flaming Dawn continent. He wanted to admire the colorful world of the Flaming Dawn continent. First, they planned to go to the far east of the continent to admire the sunrise on the Eastern Sea. The sunrise on the Eastern Sea was the best place to admire the sunrise on the Flaming Dawn continent. The magnificent sunrise there was also one of the most famous wonders on the Flaming Dawn continent. On this day, Imo Shi had already teleported to an island on the Eastern Sea, East Pole Island. Those who came to admire the sunrise would basically come to East Pole Island. There was a tall mountain on East Pole Island called East Pole Mountain. This East Pole Mountain was the best place to admire the sunrise on the entire Flaming Dawn continent. Of course, East Pole Mountain was divided into 9 levels of observation platforms. The lowest level was where ordinary people could admire the sunrise for free. Further up, the second level was the observation platform for officials. The third level was the observation platform for hunters. The fourth level was the observation platform for third-rate sections. The fifth level was the observation platform for second-rate sections. The 8th level was the observation platform for first-rate sections. The 9th level was for the upper echelons of first-rate sects, and they had to be Grand Desolate Masters or above. Only by satisfying these two requirements could one ascend. In the entire continent, there were only a handful of people who were qualified to ascend to the first level of the observation platform. Mo Shi arrived at the foot of East Pole Mountain and asked about the situation. He didn't care. He directly brought Happy to a 5-star hotel to check in. At around 4:00 the next morning, he and Happy woke up early and arrived at East Pole Mountain. There was an almighty senior who had set up a seal on East Pole Mountain. They couldn't fly or teleport, so they could only walk up the mountain. The two of them arrived at the observation platform at the lowest level. The observation platform here was huge, occupying an area the size of dozens of soccer fields. However, even such a huge observation platform was already packed with people. Mo Shi held Happy's hand, and under everyone's envious gazes, they slowly climbed up the stairs by the side. Soon, they arrived at the second level. The second level was the observation platform for officials. One had to show an official certificate to enter. The people on the observation platform were all very dignified. The officials who could come to East Pole Island weren't minor officials. However, Mo Shi didn't care. He pulled Happy up the stairs. The third level was the observation platform for desolate hunters. There weren't many desolate hunters on the Flaming Dawn continent. Therefore, the observation platform here was much smaller, and there weren't many people here. Happy gestured to Mo Shi, "Let's do it here." Mo Shi shook his head and lowered his head. "No matter what it is, I'll give you the best. So, let's go to the top level." Chapter 484. No matter what it was, Mo Shi wanted to give Happy the best. Therefore, he said to Happy, "Let's go to the top floor." At this moment, on the stone steps leading to the top floor, a beautiful woman who looked to be in her 40s was slowly walking up the stairs. She was dressed in white and looked like a fairy. When the disciples of the first-rate sects on the 8th floor saw this person, their eyes were filled with envy. "What a fairy! Who is she? Keep your voice down." Those who are qualified to go to the top floor are the upper echelons of the first-rate sections. They are either sect leaders or elders. Moreover, they have to be Grand Desolate Masters. Hiss. So, she must be the upper echelon of a large sect. I know her. She is the sect leader of the third-ranked Mystic Moon female sect, Xianxia. No wonder she's the third-ranked sect. I heard that sect leader Qian has lived for more than 800 years and has already reached level 7 Grand Desolate Master. So strong? With Qian Xuanyue's strength, she could naturally hear the discussions of these disciples. However, she did not care. She came here today to reminisce. When she was young, this mountain did not have any restrictions. When she was watching the sunrise on the top floor of this mountain, she met a young man by chance. From then on, the two fell in love. Later, when she was in danger, the young man fell into thousands of ice caves and died in order to save her. Since then, she would come here every year to watch the sunrise on this day. At this moment, she came to the entrance of the top floor of the observation platform. A desolate hunter who was in charge of guarding the entrance of the observation platform saw Xianxia walking up step by step. He hurriedly greeted her and said, "Sect leader Qian, you're here. Please come in." As he spoke, he bent down and made a respectful gesture. Xianxia was an expert of the third-ranked sect on the continent, so these guards would naturally be respectful to her. Xianxia nodded slightly and then entered the observation platform. She was the only one on the top floor of the observation platform. She walked to the leftmost position and sat on the bench that she was used to. She silently looked at the horizon that had just turned white. The guards were whispering to each other. Who was that just now? Why are you so respectful to her? It was obvious that the guard who asked the question was new. The guard from before said, "Didn't you receive training before taking up the post?" The people on the top floor are basically the sect masters and elders of first-rate sects. You have to recognize all of them. The guard who asked the question smiled awkwardly and said that there are indeed a lot of people. In the top 10 sects, there are 10 sect masters and over 100 elders. Another guard next to him glared at him and said, "That's right. No matter how many things there are, you have to remember them. These people are all big shots, and we can't afford to offend any of them." She was the sect leader of the Mystic Moon female sect, Wuxia Xianxia. A level 7 desolate hunter. It's said that her strength can be ranked in the top 5 in the entire continent. Hiss, the guard who asked the question sucked in a breath of cold air. A guard next to him said, "So you'd better go back and do more homework. Otherwise, you might lose your head if you're not careful. Moving my head is a small matter, but implicating your entire family is a big matter." The guard who asked the question nodded repeatedly. "Okay, I'll record everyone's names when I get back today." While they were talking, Mosher and Happy also walked up the mountain path. When the guards saw them, they took a few careful glances. They didn't know these two people. However, this girl was very beautiful. Even so, they still stopped Mosher and Happy. "I'm sorry, no trespassing is allowed on the observation deck on the top floor," an old guard said. However, although he used the words, "I'm sorry," he didn't mean it at all. Instead, his tone was very tough. Mosher originally wanted to talk to them nicely. However, they were so rude and unreasonable as soon as they came up. Mosher didn't need to indulge them. His voice was slightly cold as he said, "We're all here to enjoy the sunrise. There's no need to divide them into ranks. Aren't you being too unreasonable by doing this?" That guard chuckled twice. "Unreasonable? You're right. In the East Pole, the Island Master is the reason. This is the rule of the Island Master, so we have to follow the rules." The other guard waved his hand impatiently and shooed Mosher away as if he was shooing away a fly. Go, go, go. Go to wherever it's cool." Mosher sneered. He was just about to make a move to scare these people. However, at this moment, Wuxia Xianxia heard the noise. She couldn't help but turn her head. When she turned her head, she saw a familiar face. Her heart skipped a beat. She had never seen the owner of this face before. However, she couldn't be more familiar with this face. This was the person that the disciples sent back a few days ago. The person who could summon a powerful creature and destroy a level 10 mutated desolate beast. Moreover, it was very likely that he was the one who slaughtered the entire Dragon Valley. The Mystic Moon sect had also done an investigation. This person's name was Mosher, the Island Master of Hunting Island No. 1. And he had an even more domineering title, Dragon Lord. Although she didn't know why some of his subordinates called him Dragon Lord, he was able to destroy the Dragon Valley that had been passed down for tens of thousands of years by himself. It was not an exaggeration to call him Dragon Lord. Thinking of this, she quickly stood up and walked to the entrance. She said, "Greetings, Dragon Lord." This was the first time she met Mosher. She didn't know whether to call him Dragon Lord or Island Master Mo. However, after thinking about it, the title Dragon Lord was more domineering than Island Master Mo. Perhaps he would like this title more. Mosher was a little surprised. He looked at the woman from head to toe. He was sure that they didn't know each other. He asked, "You are?" Wuxia Xianxia hurriedly introduced herself with a smile. "Oh, I'm the sect leader of the Mystic Moon sect, Wuxia Xianxia." Mosher was puzzled. "Do we know each other?" Wuxia Xianxia shook her head and said, "We haven't met before, but Island Master Mo, Dragon Lord, your name is like thunder to my ears." The guards next to them were all a little confused. Wuxia Xianxia was definitely one of the top people on the continent. She was ranked in the top 5 in terms of strength. But now, she was so respectful to this young man. Could it be that this young man was stronger than her and had a higher status than her? However, no matter how hard the guards racked their brains, they couldn't think of such a young man in the top 5. Seeing that the guards were still in a daze, Wuxia Xianxia couldn't help but frown slightly. "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and invite the Dragon Lord in." She was actually doing this out of kindness. This Dragon Lord was a vicious and merciless person. He had slaughtered so many people in the Dragon Valley. He had also killed so many snakes on the Hell Python star. Moreover, it was said that when he saw the disciples of the various sects in trouble, he had no intention of saving them. In the end, he had saved 1/3 of them unintentionally. From this, it could be seen how hard-hearted this Dragon Lord was. In the face of such a person, if he was unhappy, it was very likely that he would casually kill these guards. Chapter 485. Xianxia seemed to be reprimanding those guards, but she was actually saving them. Among those guards, the oldest one was a shrewd person. He naturally knew why Xianxia reprimanded them. At the same time, he was even more surprised by Mo Shi's identity. Xianxia didn't even dare to say that she wanted to protect them directly. Instead, she reprimanded them. It could be seen that this person's status was definitely above Xianxuanyue's. Logically speaking, if someone with a high status wanted to enter the top floor, they had to report to the island master of East Pole Island. But at this moment, he didn't dare to hesitate at all. He hurriedly stepped aside and apologized. "I'm sorry, Dragon Lord. I was blind to have offended you. Please forgive me, Dragon Lord. Please speak, Dragon Lord." As he spoke, he gestured for them to enter. A young guard next to him wanted to say something. But he was pulled back by another middle-aged guard, so he couldn't say anything. They stepped aside, and Mo Shi couldn't be bothered to argue with them. Happy, he walked into the observation deck. Behind them, the guards looked at each other in dismay. Finally, the young guard spoke in a low voice. "Seniors, those two just now are." The other guards shook their heads. None of them knew this person. The young guard chuckled and said, "It seems that you haven't done your homework." The guards glared at the young guard. The young guard continued. "Although I don't know who they are, that girl just now is really beautiful. She's definitely the most beautiful and pure girl I've ever seen." As soon as he said that, the other guards broke out in a cold sweat. They quickly turned their heads to look. They saw Mo Shi glancing at them intentionally or unintentionally. Their legs were about to turn to jelly. Based on their experience, a person who even the sect leader of the Mystic Moon sect had to treat with respect was either extremely powerful, or he was extremely powerful. For such a person, one's life would be in danger if he looked at his woman. This brat was simply tired of living. "What nonsense are you talking about? Shut your damn mouth. If you want to die, don't drag us down with you." At this moment, the young man also realized that there was something wrong with his words. The clothes on his back were instantly drenched. He glanced at Mo Shi and muttered, Sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. I'm sorry." The few older guards scolded, "That's right. You really don't know how to do things properly. Hurry up and report this to the city lord." They wanted to send the young guard away so that he wouldn't cause any trouble here. But before he could leave, another elderly guard called out to him. "Wait, I'll go with you." This matter was of great importance. He was afraid that if the young man went alone, something would happen. The young man also knew the importance of this matter, so he didn't dare to joke around anymore. He just nodded and said, "Okay." For such a big event, he felt more at ease with an older person by his side. At the same time, on the observation deck, Mo Shi and Happy chose a seat and sat down. Seeing that the eastern sky was getting brighter and brighter, the two of them focused their attention on the eastern horizon. At this moment, the sect master of the Mystic Moon sect, Xianxia, who was sitting not far away from them, was feeling nervous. In this situation, was she a third wheel? Should she leave? But if she left, wouldn't it seem too deliberate? Moreover, the Dragon Lord and Xianxia were obviously in the zone. If she caused any trouble at this time, wouldn't it be too abrupt? Who would have thought that Xianxia, who had lived for more than 800 years, would be so nervous and unable to make up her mind? The contrast between this and her fairy-like appearance was too great. In fact, she couldn't be blamed. Although she had experienced great storms and seen everything, she had something that she cared about. However, she had something she cared about, and that was her entire Mystic Moon female sect. Once a person had something that they cared about, they would be worried about gains and losses when they encountered something. Especially the person in front of her. He could even destroy the Dragon Valley, let alone the Mystic Moon sect. If something went wrong and made him unhappy, it would definitely be a disaster for the entire Mystic Moon sect. Therefore, she had to be careful. Mo sure didn't know what Xianxia was thinking. He originally wanted to try to plunder her memory. However, Xianxia was a full realm higher than him. He tried a few times, but he didn't succeed. So he simply stopped plundering. At this moment, the white of the eastern sky had turned light red. Slowly, the range of the light red became larger and larger. In the end, almost the entire eastern sky turned crimson. A moment later, a red dot appeared from where the water met in the east. One could hear someone shouting from the observation deck below, "It's coming out, it's coming out." Mo sure hugged Happy, and the two of them subconsciously leaned close to each other. Not far away, Xianxuanyue's eyes gradually became blurry when she saw this scene. She recalled every sunrise that she had watched with that man. A moment later, a red arc gradually rose. It was not like the sunrise on Earth, where the sun was so small. The sunrise here was very big. This arc almost occupied the entire sea in the east. Then, it was a semicircle. Finally, a red sun that occupied almost half of the sky broke free from the sea and jumped out. The entire eastern sky and sea were dyed red by this huge sun. Looking around, their vision was filled with the sun. This scene was extremely shocking. When the people who were still noisy saw this, they all fell silent for a long time. They were all so shocked that they couldn't speak. When Mo Sure and Happy saw the huge red sun, both of them were deeply shocked. After a long time, a thought appeared in Mo Sure's mind. He asked, "Happy, do you want to watch such a sunrise every day?" Happy nodded. "Yes." Mo Sure said, "Then from now on, we'll watch the sunrise every day in Miniature World." In Miniature World, he was a god. It was not difficult for him to create such a sunrise. Of course, Miniature World was still too small for now. He could only create such a sunrise visually. If he wanted to create such a sunrise, he would have to wait until Miniature World was upgraded in the future. After watching the sunrise, Mo Sure asked Happy, "Happy? Where else do you want to go? I'll take you there." When Xianxia heard this question, her heart skipped a beat. Hundreds of years ago, that young man had asked her the same question. He had said that he would take her to see all the beautiful scenery in the world. However, thinking of this, Xianxia could not help but hold her breath and wait quietly for Happy's answer. Chapter 486. After hearing Mo Sure's question, Xianxia immediately held her breath and waited for Happy's answer. That young man had also asked her the same question. Her answer was that as long as she was with him, she was willing to go anywhere. He wanted to hear if this girl had the same answer as him. However, this girl called Happy did not answer. She just leaned her head on Dragon Lord's shoulder. The two of them just leaned on each other. At this moment, even Xianxia understood what she meant. As long as the two of them were together, she was willing to go anywhere. Xianxia looked at the two of them in a daze. Her thoughts went back to hundreds of years ago, when the two of them leaned on each other and watched the sunrise. Gradually, the gigantic red sun rose higher and lower, and gradually became smaller. The people watching the sunrise also went down the mountain. However, after they went down the mountain, they did not immediately disperse. Instead, they stayed at the foot of the mountain and waited for the people coming down. The ordinary people at the bottom of the mountain went down first. Then, they all stopped. After a while, the officials and desolate hunters came down one after another. Look, those are all desolate hunters. Damn, I've lived for a few decades, but I've never seen more than 10 hunters. Today, I saw so many of them at once. If only I could become a desolate hunter like them. At this moment, someone shouted, the disciples of the first-rate forces are coming down. Among the first-rate forces today, there are no disciples of the Ancient Flame sect or the Ancient Dragon sect. Among the top 10 sects, there are only some female disciples from the Mystic Moon female sect. Mystic Moon female sect? Are they those female disciples who are so beautiful? TSK, they are all beauties. It's really killing me. If I can have a girlfriend like her, even if I die immediately, it will be worth it. Come on, these disciples of the Mystic Moon female sect are not people you can associate with. You have to be a disciple of one of the top 10 first-rate forces. Sigh, I'm just saying. We can only look at these disciples from afar. As they spoke, more than 20 female disciples of the Mystic Moon female sect stood at the foot of the mountain. They were all dressed in white and looked like fairies descending from the clouds. However, at this moment, these fairy-like women were divided into 2 rows at the foot of the mountain, facing the mountain. All of them lowered their heads and bowed respectfully. They seemed to be waiting for someone. From the looks of it, his status should be much higher than theirs. Other than the upper echelons of those first-rate forces, there's probably no one else. Not long after, a woman came down from the mountain. Still dressed in white, he looked like an immortal. After descending the mountain, the group of female disciples all respectfully said, "Sect leader." Only then did everyone realize that they were waiting for their sect master. This is the sect leader of the Mystic Moon female sect? She is also a great beauty. Damn, I didn't come here in vain. I can actually meet the sect leader of the Mystic Moon sect. He's a big shot ranked in the top 5. That's right. How can an ordinary person meet such a big shot in their lifetime? To be able to meet you today, it's definitely a blessing from our ancestors. In the midst of their conversation, a flying car could be seen speeding toward them from afar. After landing, a person got out of the car. Someone recognized him and said, "He is the Island Lord of East Pole Island and also the City Lord of East Pole City." Hiss. The Island Lord of East Pole Island. He's also a big shot ranked in the top 5 on the Flaming Dawn continent. To be able to meet 2 big shots ranked in the top 5 at once today, it's not just smoke from our ancestors' graves, it's fire. At this moment, someone raised a question. I heard that the Island Lord of East Pole Island rarely comes here. Why is he suddenly here today? Yeah, I also heard that the Island Lord of East Pole Island once had a sad past here, so he basically won't come here unless there's something special. Maybe, he heard that the sect leader of the Mystic Moon female sect is here, so he specially came to welcome her. Now that you put it that way, it does make sense. Both of them are ranked in the top 5. Now that the sect leader of the Mystic Moon female sect has come to his territory, it's normal for him to come out to welcome her. There's nothing wrong with that. In the midst of the discussion, everyone was certain that the Island Lord of East Pole Island was here to welcome Xianxia. At this moment, the Island Lord of East Pole Island saw Xianxia and said with a smile, "Sect leader Qian, you're here." Xianxia came once a year, so he was not surprised. Xianxia nodded slightly and replied, "Yes." She had more or less guessed the purpose of the Island Lord's visit. So she did not ask much. As they spoke, 2 people came down from the stone steps on the mountain path. It was a man and a woman. The man had delicate features, and the woman was pure and lovely. Someone noticed the 2 of them and could not help but say, F***CK, what a pair of B** cheese. What B** cheese? They're clearly an immortal couple. Yeah, that's what I meant. In my eyes, an immortal couple and a B** cheese are synonymous. You're just envious, jealous, and hateful. Yes, you're right. Soon, Mo sure and happy arrived at the foot of the mountain. At this moment, the Island Lord of East Pole Island cupped his fists and said, "I didn't know you were coming. I didn't know that Island Master Mo would be gracing us with his presence." Please forgive me for not going out to meet you. His tone was very respectful. Huh? What? What's going on? Everyone was dumbfounded. The Island Lord of East Pole Island is here to welcome this young man? Xianxia also said enthusiastically. Dragon Lord, if you have time, please come to our Mystic Moon female sect as a guest. We welcome you at any time. The surrounding people were once again dumbfounded. F***CK. So Sect Master Xianxia is also waiting for him. Everyone thought that the Island Lord was here to welcome Xianxia. They also thought that Xianxia was waiting for the Island Lord. However, they never expected that the Island Lord was actually here to welcome this young man. And Xianxia was also waiting for this young man. Who exactly is he? The Island Lord and Sect Master Xianxia seem to be very respectful to him. This is truly inconceivable. Even if Guan Sanghai, the strongest person on the continent, came, Sect Master Xianxia and the Island Lord wouldn't be so respectful. Could it be that this young man's strength is very terrifying? That's impossible, right? At this moment, the 20 disciples of the Mystic Moon female sect beside Xianxia looked at Mo Shi's face in shock. Everyone's heart skipped a beat when they saw it. Isn't this the person that the sect has been talking about? The person who can summon a level 10 mutated beast. The person who destroyed the entire dragon clan. Thinking of this, all the disciples of the Mystic Moon female sect did not even dare to breathe loudly. They were not like the people around them who were still discussing. The more they understood how terrifying a person was, the more cautious they would be in front of this person. Chapter 487. Everyone thought that the East Pole Island Lord was here to welcome Xianxia. But they didn't expect that he was here to welcome this young man. Even Xianxia, the sect leader of the Mystic Moon sect, which was ranked third on the continent, was welcoming this young man respectfully. One had to know that these two people were ranked in the top 5 of the continent. They were the strongest among the strongest. They were definitely big shots. Yet, both of them were so respectful to this young man. They really couldn't figure it out. Mo Shi was a little surprised to see both of them welcoming him. He asked the East Pole Island Lord, "Do we know each other?" The East Pole Island Lord had naturally seen Mo Shi's portrait before. He said humbly and respectfully, "Island Lord Mo, you don't know me, but your name resounds like thunder in my ears. Hearing that Island Lord Mo has come to my island, East Pole Island is really honored. Naturally, I have to be the host. Please come to my humble abode and give me a chance to entertain you." Mo Shi turned to look at Happy and asked, "What do you think?" He didn't mind. But if Happy didn't want to go, he naturally didn't want to go either. Happy didn't say anything. He just looked at Mo Shi. His meaning was obvious: if Brother Mo wants to go, Happy can go. If Brother Mo doesn't want to go, Happy can't go. Mo Shi raised his head and said to the East Pole Island Lord, "Let's go then." The East Pole Island Lord immediately looked happy. Then, he called Xianxia, sect leader Qian, "Come with us. It'll be more lively with more people." Xianxia nodded. Okay. This surprised the East Pole Island Lord. Xianxia was a little cold and aloof. And she was in a high position. Therefore, she usually didn't get together with others easily. She came to East Pole Island every year to watch the sunrise. In the first few years, the East Pole Island Lord even invited her. But she rejected him every time. Later on, he stopped inviting her. This time, because she was right in front of him, he invited her out of courtesy. He didn't expect her to agree. However, the East Pole Island Lord thought for a while and understood. She was probably afraid that if she didn't agree, it would seem that she wasn't giving Island Lord Mo face. If they really infuriated Island Master Mo, he could easily wipe out the entire Mystic Moon female sect. Soon, the East Pole Island Lord called for 2 flying cars to bring Mo Shi and the others away. Mo Shi rarely rode in flying cars. He thought it was too slow. Compared to the flying hover shoes, he was already moving at the speed of a turtle. Not to mention his shadow step, which had reached the large success stage. However, he had to admit that this thing was indeed comfortable to sit on. There were no bumps. It was very spacious inside, and one could even stand or lie down. The most important thing was that the facilities were complete. There were entertainment facilities such as computers, toilets, bathrooms, and other living facilities. There were even luxurious flying cars, complete with a gym, a billiard hall, and various other facilities. It was a little too exaggerated. Riding on the flying car, they arrived at the East Pole City's City Lord's mansion after about 10 minutes. The City Lord's mansion was grand and majestic, and its main color was a fiery red like the sun. It fit the theme of sunrise on East Pole Island. After entering the City Lord's mansion, the East Pole Island master arranged a banquet to entertain Immersive. The servants of the City Lord's mansion did not know why the island master was so enthusiastic about a young man. The island master, as one of the top 5 experts on the continent, had always been proud and arrogant. Even if the top expert came, the island master would at most treat him to a cup of tea. But today, he was so enthusiastic about this young man. Could it be that this young man's strength was even stronger than the number 1 expert? Of course not. But why was the island master so enthusiastic about him? They really could not figure it out. However, they knew that since the island master treated him so warmly, they naturally did not dare to neglect him. They were all very careful when they served him tea, for fear of making a mistake. At the same time, the news had already spread on East Pole Island. There were many foreigners who came to East Pole Island to watch the sunrise. They then spread the news in all directions. The news also spread rapidly on the internet. After all, it was about the 2 top 5 experts. The news spread very quickly. Breaking news. The East Pole Island master invites a mysterious man as a guest. Even the sect master of the Mystic Moon sect has to bow and greet him. Who has such great respect? 2 of the top 5 experts are so respectful to him. Who is he? Reports with similar titles kept appearing on the homepage of major online platforms. Wang Yi's identity also attracted a lot of speculation. Could he be a hidden expert? I've never heard of him before. Even the top 5 rankers have to be respectful to him. Just how strong is he? Soon, Wang Yi's identity was also dug out. He's the new island master of Hunting Island number 1. Wasn't Hunting Island number 1 infected? I heard that Hunting Island number 1 was infected 2 years ago. Since then, almost no one has been to Hunting Island number 1. No, I accidentally saw it on the satellite map. Although most of Hunting Island number 1 was infected, it was blood red. But in the central area, there was still green. No matter which Hunting Island he is the island master of, if he's really that strong, why haven't I heard of him before? Yeah, in the past 2 years, I've barely heard any news about him. Why did he suddenly pop up now? At the same time, in an inn in an ancient city. Han Jianxing was holding a wine jug, pouring wine into his mouth while watching the boats coming and going on the river. At this time, Han Lubai quickly walked in. Dad, look, look. Han Jianxing put down the wine jug and looked at the news on Han Lubai's multifunctional watch. A moment later, a look of shock appeared in his eyes. Seeing the shock on her father's face, Han Lubai also smiled. For so many years, her father didn't seem to be interested in anything. Other than when he was talking to her, he would have other expressions. At all other times, he seemed to be a wastrel. And even if something big happened in front of him, he wouldn't show the slightest hint of surprise. She didn't expect him to show such a shocked expression today. In fact, Han Jianxing couldn't help but be shocked. Just a year ago, when he had first met Mo Shi, this guy had been just a wasteland hunter. In a year, he had reached the point where 2 of the top 5 experts of the Flaming Origin continent greeted him with a smile. This was too exaggerated. But thinking about the strength this kid showed in the ancient land of the dragons, it was reasonable. Even so, he was still shocked. A moment later, he slowly said, "It seems that he's the one who destroyed the dragon race." Han Lubai rebuked, "Dad, look at you. Dad, look at you. Why didn't you let me chase after him earlier? Why did you have to let him reach your strength? Now, he's already able to make 2 of the top 5 experts bow to him. If I chase after him, how can I be worthy?" Han Jianxing rolled his eyes at his daughter. "You're a girl, can't you be more reserved?" Chapter 488. Mo Shi stayed in the city lord's mansion for 3 days. During these 3 days, he went to watch the sunrise with Happy every day. During these 3 days, more and more people rushed here. They all saw the news on the internet and knew that a person that even the East Pole Island Master had to treat with respect had appeared here, so they rushed over to watch the show. One must know that on the Flaming Dawn continent, people like the East Pole Island Master were basically at the top. No matter how strong your other forces were, he wouldn't care about you. Even the government had to be careful in front of him. The only people who could make him lower his head were those who were far stronger than him. If even the top 5 had to lower their heads, how strong would this person be? Who would be stronger if he were compared with the top-ranked ancient sect master of the Flaming Dawn ancient sect? However, these people were destined to return in disappointment. After watching the sunrise for 3 days, Mo Shi and Happy planned to leave East Pole Island. When they were eating in East Pole City, Mo Shi asked Happy, "Happy, where are we going next?" Happy still looked at Mo Shi with his big eyes that seemed to be able to speak. Mo Shi smiled and said, "I heard that the aurora on North Pole Island is very beautiful. How about we go there to see the aurora?" Happy nodded and still looked at Mo Shi with his big eyes that seemed to be able to speak. Mo Shi said, "All right, let's go to North Pole Island now." When the East Pole Island Master heard Mo Shi's words, he suggested, "If Island Master Mo just wants to see the beautiful scenery, we recently discovered a magnificent place called Sea Heart Waterfall. It's only 1,000 kilometers away from here. Island Master Mo, why don't you go take a look? You definitely won't be disappointed." Sea Heart Waterfall. This was the first time Mo Shi heard of it. He asked, "What's Sea Heart Waterfall?" The East Pole Island Master said, "It's a deep ring-shaped hole in the vast ocean. The surrounding seawater keeps flowing into the hole, forming a ring-shaped waterfall. That's why it's called Sea Heart Waterfall." When Mo Shi heard this, he felt that it was strange. He said to Happy, "Let's go take a look then." Happy nodded slightly. The East Pole Island Master said, "Then I'll lead the way for Island Master Mo." As he spoke, he ordered his men to prepare a water airship. He said, "You won't be able to experience the wonderful scenery on the way to the Sea Heart Waterfall if you take a high-altitude airship. You can only feel it when you're close to the surface of the water in an airship." Wang Yi nodded. The airship was about 30 meters long. The facilities inside were also very complete. There was also a driver and 5 service staff. Mo Shi and the others boarded the airship, and it slowly took off. After rising to a height of about 2 meters, it began to fly close to the surface of the water. Gradually, East Pole Island grew further and further behind them. In the end, East Pole Island turned into a small black dot and disappeared from their sight. At this moment, they were surrounded by a vast ocean. It looked no different from an ordinary sea. Airships mainly relied on particle thrusters to fly, and their speed was very fast, reaching more than 500 kilometers per hour. After flying for about half an hour, the sea in front of them finally began to change. The surface of the sea was no longer dark blue. It was black. It was as black as ink. Traveling on such a sea gave people the feeling that they were traveling on an abyss. It made people panic. The East Pole Island Lord explained to Wang Yi. "Island Lord Mo, we're currently in a place called the Black Sea region. The name of the Black Sea region doesn't sound very good, but it actually has many wonderful features." Mo Shi tilted his head, waiting for him to explain. However, he didn't explain. He only said, "Island Lord Mo, please take a look. As he spoke, he patted the cockpit door and asked the pilot to open it fully. Then, he pointed behind the airship. Behind the airship, on the surface of the Black Sea, a trace could be seen extending into the distance. At this moment, the color of the trace was quietly changing. At first, it turned green. It was as green as a blade of grass, and it extended to the horizon in a single year. Then, the trace turned green again. Then, it turned red, yellow, purple. This mark was constantly changing colors. It was as if it was equipped with neon lights. The East Pole Island Lord took out a handful of something that looked like sand and threw it toward the surface of the water. The surrounding water instantly changed into a variety of colors. And in the water below these colors, there were colorful fishes swimming. When Happy saw this, he couldn't help but open his mouth slightly. His face was full of surprise. When Mosher saw Happy's surprise, he was also in a good mood. They continued to fly forward. They passed by a sea valley in front of them. The so-called sea valley had waves that were hundreds of meters high on both sides. Passing through it was as if they were passing through a canyon. The surprising thing was that the waves that were hundreds of meters high on both sides of the sea valley looked very dangerous, as if they would crash down at any time. But in fact, the waves wouldn't crash down at all. The East Pole Island Lord introduced, "We discovered this more than 50 years ago. We couldn't figure out the principle. That's why we never opened it." After passing through the sea valley, they continued to fly forward for more than an hour. At this moment, they heard a rumbling sound coming from ahead. At first, the rumbling sound wasn't loud. But as they got closer, the rumbling sound became louder and louder. In the end, it was like a deafening roar of a tsunami. The airship slowly rose. When it was 50 meters high, they finally saw a huge cliff 100 meters in front of them. The sudden appearance of such a huge cliff in the middle of the sea was shocking and novel. Gradually, the altitude continued to rise. Only then did they see clearly that it wasn't a cliff. Instead, it was a huge circular waterfall. This huge circular waterfall had a radius of more than 20 kilometers. The surrounding seawater kept pouring into this huge circular hole. The deafening rumbling sound was the sound of seawater pouring into the hole. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, it would be very difficult to imagine that such a huge hole would appear in the middle of the sea. This huge hole was pitch black and deep. It was like a huge eye on the planet, staring at those who dared to peep at it. Even someone as experienced and knowledgeable as Mosher was deeply shocked. As for Happy, she was so shocked that she couldn't speak for a long time. It seemed like she didn't know how to speak in the first place. After a long time, Happy gently tugged at Mosher's clothes. There was some fear in her eyes. Mosher knew that Happy was afraid. He said, "Let's go now." However, Mosher wasn't afraid. Instead, he felt a sense of intimacy from this huge and deep eye. This feeling came out of nowhere. He couldn't help but say in his heart, "System, sign in." Chapter 489. Mosher looked down at the huge circular waterfall and the vast sea from the sky. He suddenly had a feeling. He said in his mind, "System, sign in." The system replied instantly as usual, frowny face, "Sign in successful." Sign in location, Sea Heart Waterfall. Sign in reward, 1 dragon pool. Mosher was slightly puzzled. Dragon pool? What the hell? He looked at it in his mind. A small item appeared in the storage compartment of the system backpack. Looking carefully, he could see that this small thing looked the same as the huge circular waterfall in front of him. And what was strange was that there was water flowing down from this circular waterfall. At the bottom of the circular waterfall was a deep pool. The bottom of the pool couldn't be seen. There seemed to be black shadows swimming inside. He looked at the item description carefully. Frowny face, dragon pool. Can be used to raise creatures above the Grand Desolate Master level. These creatures can evolve into dragons after a certain period of time in the dragon pool. Different species can evolve into different dragons. Seeing this, Mosher felt like cursing Brother Knife. He had spent so much time, so much energy, suffered so much to evolve into a dragon. But now, as long as he entered the dragon pool, he could evolve into a dragon. It was really a little heart-wrenching. But when he continued to read the introduction, he was relieved. These dragons that evolved through the dragon pool will be 100% loyal to the host. It turned out that he had suffered so much and was going to be the boss after evolving into a dragon. And these guys seemed to evolve very easily, as long as they entered the dragon pool. But after they evolved into dragons, they could only be his underlings. Creatures equivalent to the Grand Desolate Master level weren't easy to find in the Flaming Origin continent. He would probably have to go to the hunting grounds after the 20th to find them. However, Mosher planned to take Happy to see the beautiful scenery of this world. So he didn't plan to go for the time being. Mosher looked at the Sea Heart waterfall. The terrain here was rather strange. He probed with his dragon will. However, after probing about 100 kilometers deep, he couldn't probe any further. It was as if something had stopped his dragon will. At this moment, Mosher wasn't interested in exploring. Half an hour later, they left the Sea Heart waterfall. They hurried to North Pole Island. They had been on the road for about 3 months. They had seen almost all the scenery along the way. Gradually, as they got closer and closer to the north, the temperature dropped. Of course, with Mosher's current physique, he wasn't afraid of the cold at all. But Happy was afraid. Mosher bought a set of winter clothes for Happy. A thick white cloak, a white scarf, and white gloves. A white hat. Dressing up like this gave people a different feeling. 2 days later, they arrived at the North Sea. At this point, a thick layer of ice had formed on the surface of the sea. Mosher scanned the area with his dragon's will, but there was no one there. Mosher teleported to North Pole Island. Although North Pole Island was called an island, it was actually very large. It was said that the area was about the same as Wuxia on Earth. Such a huge area was a world of ice and snow. In this world of ice and snow, other than the white of the ground and the blue of the sky, there were almost no other colors. On the North Pole Island, there was a North Pole City. The people living in North Pole City were all gold diggers. These so-called gold diggers weren't real gold diggers, but rather looking for crystal ores. Geologists had long explored this continent. There was a small amount of crystal ores underground, which weren't worth building mines to mine. But there were often small amounts of crystal ores that were washed into the shallow layer of ice and snow by underground rivers, and were discovered by people. Gradually, some poor people who weren't so well off came here to try their luck and see if they could find crystal ores. In the early years, there were really people who were very lucky from time to time and became rich because they found crystal ores. Thus, a large number of people began to flood into North Pole Island to try their luck. They were known as gold diggers. Due to the increasing number of gold diggers, specific residential areas were formed on North Pole Island. In the end, a city was formed here, and it was called North Pole City. These people were all poor and didn't have much money to build a city. But they had to resist the wind and snow, and also resist the harassment of some wild beasts. So, they used local materials and cut ice to build a city and houses. Thus, North Pole City was also called Ice City. Mosher and Happy entered Ice City together. When these people looked at him and Happy, their gazes were not very kind. Happy was a little puzzled. She gently tugged at Mosher's sleeve. She meant that they didn't offend these people, so why did they seem to treat them as enemies? He gently patted Happy's hand, indicating that she didn't need to worry. Then, he plundered these people's dragon senses. After reading these people's memories, Mosher understood the whole story. It turned out that more than 200 kilometers northeast of North Pole City, the ice layer suddenly collapsed, revealing a huge ice cave. People all went to check the ice cave. What they saw was incredible. On the walls of the ice cave, there were tens of thousands of deep caves. Many people found crystal source ores in these caves. Thus, more and more people rushed into the ice cave. And now, almost every cave had been occupied by people. Some people even fought to seize these caves. So, when they saw outsiders, they thought that they were here to snatch their caves. After understanding this, Mo Shi shook his head and stopped paying attention to these people. He and Happy found a restaurant. After traveling for more than half a day, they wanted to eat a hot meal. The food here was very simple. Most of it was local desolate beast meat. As for vegetarian dishes, there were almost no vegetarian dishes. After all, it was easy to imagine how difficult it was to grow vegetables in this world of ice and snow. However, the desolate beast meat was cooked very well. Mo Shi was also hungry. He ate in big mouthfuls. Happy also had a good appetite and ate some. While they were eating, the waiter in the restaurant came over to pour them some water. Esteemed guests, you're also here for the ice cave, right? Then you're really late. Now, all the caves in the ice cave have been occupied. Mo Shi shook his head and said, "We're only here to admire the aurora borealis." The waiter was stunned. "You traveled hundreds of thousands of kilometers just to see the aurora borealis?" Mo Shi nodded. "Yes." The waiter nodded. "You two are really in a good mood." Mo Shi knew that the waiter clearly didn't believe him. However, he didn't care. But since the waiter mentioned the ice cave, he planned to go take a look with Happy after they finished admiring the aurora borealis. After all, they had already traveled hundreds of thousands of kilometers. If they didn't go take a look, they would have doubts in their hearts. What was in the ice cave? Chapter 490. 490, Aurora. The next morning, before dawn, Mo Shi and Happy arrived at the east side of East Pole City. At this moment, a green light screen seemed to be hanging down from the sky. And this light screen was still shaking. After a while, the light screen gradually turned blue, alternating between blue and green. In the dark blue night sky, the light screen was shaking faster and faster. It was as if the fairies in the sky were washing muslin. After a while, the light screen calmed down. Mo Shi turned to look at Happy. He saw that Happy seemed to be very shocked. When she was on Earth, most of her childhood memories were spent in the base. After coming to the Flaming Continent, she basically lived on Hunting Island 1. She had never seen such a magical scene. Behind them, on the city wall of East Pole City, a few guards looked at Mo Shi and Happy's backs from afar and discussed. "They can't really be here to see the aurora, right? You're talking nonsense. Have you ever heard of someone running hundreds of thousands of kilometers just to see the aurora? I think it's strange too, but if they want to rob those ice caves, why don't they hurry up and go there instead of wasting time here? Who knows what they're up to? Anyway, they definitely don't have good intentions." Happy seemed to like the aurora. So Mo Shi stayed in North Pole City for a few more days. He watched the aurora for 5 days. And during these 5 days, the ice cave also changed. It was said that several major forces of the Flaming Continent had already sent people to take a look. Finally, on the 6th day, the 3 most powerful forces of the Flaming Continent, the Ancient Flame Sect, the Ancient Dragon Sect, and the Mystic Moon Sect, had already sent a large number of disciples to North Pole Island. After coming to North Pole Island, they didn't go to North Pole City, but went directly to the huge ice cave. The 3 sects were basically led by one of their elders. Each sect sent 200 to 300 people. When the gold diggers saw the people of the 3 sects arrive, they all subconsciously retreated. And none of the gold diggers dared to say a word. Although they were unhappy, in the face of the 3 most powerful forces of the Flaming Continent, what did they dare to say? Did they not want to live anymore? The first-ranked elder of the Flame Origin Ancient Sect extended his hand and gestured to the other 2 sections. They wanted the 2 sects to make the announcement. However, the elders of the 2 sects returned the greeting and made an inviting gesture at the same time. The two sects did not dare to be arrogant in front of the Flame Dawn Ancient Sect. The elder of the Ancient Flame Sect nodded his head. What he meant was that since that was the case, he would gladly oblige. Although he didn't intend to give in, he still had to be polite on the surface. Then, he turned to the last disciple of the Flame Dawn Ancient Sect leader and said, "Jiu Ping, you do it." Jiu Ping was the sect master's personal disciple. He was also the next sect master who was appointed by the sect master. Nowadays, the sect master rarely showed himself. The affairs of the sect were all handled by a few elders. And now, these elders are consciously pushing Jiu Ping out. Now that he had reached the Grand Desolate Master level, it was time for him to slowly take over the Flame Beginning Ancient Sect. That Jiu Ping had a handsome appearance, and he looked refined and courteous, like a modest gentleman. He didn't have the arrogance of the disciples of the other sections. He cupped his fists and bowed to the thousands of gold diggers present. Then, he said, "Everyone, it's a good thing that you found crystal source ore in this cave. Our Flame Dawn Ancient Sect is also happy to see everyone become rich. However, a few days ago, the experts of our Flame Dawn Ancient Sect, Ancient Dragon Gate, and Mystic Moon Female Sect have analyzed these caves and found that there is a certain gas element inside. This gas element has never appeared in our Flame Dawn continent before. According to our research, this gas is extremely unstable and can easily explode. Furthermore, this gas came from a hunting ground called Earth." When the gold diggers heard this, they were all shocked. From a hunting ground? How was that possible? One had to know that in theory, the gas from Earth could have been brought to the Flame Dawn continent by humans. However, it was impossible for it to appear in this cave. Therefore, there must be something fishy about this. Jiu Ping paused and looked at the gold diggers around him. Then, he continued, "Therefore, our Flame Dawn Ancient Sect, Ancient Dragon Gate, and Mystic Moon Female Sect plan to work together to find out what dangers are in this cave. Before we figure out the dangers in this cave, it's best for everyone to stay away from this ice cave." The gold diggers looked at each other. In the end, a few gold diggers said, "In that case, the three sects are also thinking about everyone's safety. We thank the three sections." Saying this, he cupped his fists towards the three sects and slowly left. With the first, the second, and third were simple. Then, more and more gold diggers turned and left. Of course, they didn't believe Jiu Ping's words. These gold diggers couldn't survive in other places on the Flame Dawn continent, so they came to the North Pole Island. They had experienced the coldness of human nature and seen all kinds of people. They naturally knew that Jiu Ping's words were just empty words. In fact, the three sects clearly knew that there were many caves here and that there were many crystal source ores in these caves, so they wanted to take over these caves. They made it sound dignified, but they were actually a bunch of bandits. However, in front of the three sects, no one dared to resist. They could only grit their teeth and swallow it down. The disciples of the three sects watched as the gold diggers around them gradually left. Although they didn't say anything, their faces were expressionless. However, their eyes revealed a hint of pride. This was the strength of the three great sections. This was the pride of the disciples of the three sections. In the entire Flame Dawn continent, no faction dared to fight against the three sections. It was also at this time that Emoshur and Happy arrived. When they saw the gold diggers slowly leaving, Happy was a bit puzzled. Emoshur casually plundered the memories of one of the gold diggers and understood the whole story. He shook his head slightly, but didn't care. In this world, there were many hardships. He wasn't the parents of these gold diggers, nor was he their friend. He had no obligation to stand up for them. If he had to intervene every time he encountered injustice, then he wouldn't be able to do anything in his life. At this time, one of the gold diggers saw that Emoshur and Happy were still going forward. He sneered and muttered to himself, "The three sects have already taken over the catacombs, and there are still people looking for trouble. Haha." Some people even stopped and turned to look at Emoshur's back. They were waiting to see Emoshur make a fool of himself. Chapter 491. Who the hell is he? The gold diggers saw Mo sure and happy walking against the flow of people to the edge of the ice cave. They all sneered inwardly. It was obvious that the three great sects knew that there was a crystal source ore in the ice cave, so they wanted to occupy it. These two people actually still wanted to go over. This was clearly looking for trouble. Especially when they saw that this guy had brought along such a beautiful and innocent girl, they were even more displeased. How could such a brainless guy have a girlfriend? God must be blind. Yeah, a guy like him deserves to be single for the rest of his life. It doesn't matter if he goes looking for trouble, but it'll be a pity if he ends up hurting that girl. While these people discussed among themselves, Mo sure dragged Happy to the edge of the ice cave. At the edge of the ice cave, a few disciples of the ancient dragon sect were secretly pleased when they saw that the gold diggers had no choice but to turn around and leave in front of the three great sections. However, at this moment, they saw two youngsters walking against the flow of people toward them. They could not help but sneer. Were these two people trying to challenge the prestige of the three great sects? An ancient Dragon Gate disciple shouted from 20 meters away. The three great sects are conducting business, so all unrelated people should make way. Don't you know? Mo sure smiled faintly when he heard this. The three great sects are so domineering. The disciples of the ancient dragon sect had originally thought that the two of them would retreat in fear after hearing the names of the three great sections. Unexpectedly, this guy knew that they were the three great sects, yet he still dared to confront them directly. Was he crazy? Those disciples were a little angry at this time, and walked towards Mo sure's side. A disciple said coldly, "Who do you think you're talking to?" "We." Just as he said this, his voice suddenly paused. It was as if someone had grabbed him by the neck when he was halfway through his sentence. When the others saw this disciple's strange behavior, they were somewhat puzzled. "What's wrong?" Only then did the disciple open his mouth and point at Mo sure. He is." Before he could finish speaking, the other ancient Dragon Gate disciples saw Mo sure's face clearly. Suddenly, he was shocked, as if thunder had exploded in his heart. Their gazes had been fixed on Happy, and they did not pay much attention to Mo sure. This was practically the nature of every normal man. At this moment, they finally saw Mo sure's face. He is Island Master Mo. When they recognized Mo sure, they immediately felt that a disaster was imminent. After all, the sect had issued an order. He ordered all disciples not to provoke Island Master Mo. If they offended Island Master Mo, they would have to bear the consequences themselves. The sect would have nothing to do with them. There were even disciples who privately spread rumors that if they really offended this Island Master Mo, the sect would directly clean up the sect in order to avoid attracting trouble. They didn't know what kind of ability this Mr. Mo had to make the higher-ups of the sect so afraid. But from this, it could be seen that this Island Master Mo was definitely not simple. And now, the few of them had actually offended Island Master Mo. How could they not be terrified? Amidst the panic, a disciple was the first to react. He hurriedly walked towards Mo sure, bowed deeply and said, "I'm sorry, Island Master Mo. I was blind and didn't recognize you. I'm really sorry for offending you." The few people behind him also reacted. They took a few steps forward and apologized to Mo sure. "Island Master Mo, we were blind. Please forgive us." Mo sure sneered and said, "Aren't the three great sects very domineering? Why did they suddenly change their masks?" Although the few people were mocked by Mo sure, they did not dare to slight him in the slightest. They all lowered their heads. Sorry. We were wrong. We should have been slapped." As they spoke, they actually started slapping themselves. As long as Island Master Mo mentioned the mistakes that they had committed in front of their sect's upper echelons, they would very likely be expelled from their sect. In the distance, the gold diggers who were originally retreating were planning to laugh at Mo sure. But when they saw this scene, they were all dumbfounded. Look at those ancient dragon sect disciples. What's going on? Slapping themselves? Damn, are they stupid? These are ancient dragon sect disciples. Isn't it too embarrassing for them to slap themselves? While they were shocked, they couldn't help but shift their gaze to Mo Shi. They had thought that Mo Shi was looking for trouble. He might even be seeking his own death. Never in their wildest dreams would they have imagined that the ancient Dragon Gate disciples would slap themselves when they saw them. Even if these gold diggers scratched their heads, they still couldn't figure out the reason behind it. At this moment, Mo Shi saw that the ancient dragon sect disciples were slapping themselves, but he didn't stop them. He no longer paid any attention to them and directly walked past them. The ancient dragon sect disciples didn't dare to stop. It was only when Mo Shi and Happy were far away that the strength they used to slap themselves slowly lessened. In the end, when Mo Shi and Happy's figures were blocked by an ice hill, they came to a stop. At this moment, their cheeks were red and swollen. They were also a little dazed by their own slaps. They looked at each other. After a while, an ancient dragon sect disciple asked, "What should we do?" The moment this question was asked, they fell into silence again. What should they do? What could they do now? They could only listen to orders. The hearts of these people were all in a state of uneasiness and uneasiness. At this moment, someone suddenly remembered, "Hurry up and tell the sect about Island Master Mo's arrival. Perhaps this can be considered as making up for our mistakes." Therefore, they hurriedly contacted their uncle masters. When their martial uncles heard this, their hearts trembled. They asked, "Are you sure it's Island Master Mo?" Those people replied, "We didn't dare to verify his identity. However, he looks exactly the same as Island Master Mo's portrait that was passed down by the sect." When those martial uncles heard this, their hearts trembled again. One of them said, "Did you offend him?" Those people's voices were much lower. We didn't mean to. We didn't recognize him at all." When those martial uncles heard this, they said, "You're on your own." With that, they hung up the call. They looked at each other in dismay once again. It's over. It's really over this time. Even their martial uncles said so. Weren't they really finished? At this moment, those martial uncles quickly reported this matter to the ancient dragon sect's elders. The ancient dragon sect's elders immediately notified the elders of the flame beginning ancient sect and the mystic moon sect. Therefore, in just a few minutes, the three major sects were on high alert. Under such circumstances, Mo Shi and Happy slowly appeared in front of everyone's eyes. More than 1,000 people were present, but no one made a sound. Mo Shi was a little confused. What was going on? Chapter 492. When Mo Shi and Happy crossed an ice hill and appeared in front of the crowd. The crowd of more than 1,000 people actually stood in an orderly manner, all of them silently and solemnly. Not a single person uttered a single word. Mo Shi was a little surprised. However, after casually plundering the memories of two people to check, he knew the reason for this. They knew that he was coming. At this moment, three elders who looked to be in their 70s or 80s walked quickly towards Mo Shi. Two of them were men and one was a woman. The men were wearing the sect master robes of the ancient dragon sect and the flame dawn ancient sect. The woman was wearing a white robe with gray patterns on her sleeves. Obviously, she was an elder of the mystic moon female sect. They walked quickly to Mo Shi's side and said, "I didn't know you were coming. I didn't know that Island Master Mo would be coming. Please forgive me for not going out to meet you. I heard that a disciple offended Island Master Mo. Island Master Mo, please tell us what you want to do with them. It's time for our ancient Flame Dawn sect to reorganize our sect." Mo Shi did not pursue the matter. He only wanted to teach those people a lesson. There was no need to harp on it. After all, his current strength was second to none in the Flame Dawn continent. If he still harped on a few small fries like before, he would be too petty. He shook his head and asked, "Have the three sects found anything in this ice cave?" The three of them looked at each other. The elder from the Mystic Moon female sect spoke first. "We didn't find anything substantial. However, there are unknown gases in all the caves. We've done some preliminary research on the unknown gases, but we haven't come to any conclusions yet. Mo sure didn't want to expose their true purpose. He only asked, "Do you mind if I go down and take a look?" The elders of the three sects did not dare to mind at all. No matter how unwilling they were, they did not dare to show it on their faces. "Of course, please go ahead, Island Master Mo. However, Island Master Mo, we haven't explored the end of these caves. There might be danger inside, so for your safety, don't go too far after entering these caves." Mo sure nodded and said, "Island Master Mo, got it." Then, with a thought, a person that looked exactly like Mo sure began to materialize beside him. At first, it was bones. The bones quickly extended and formed a complete human skeleton. Then, muscles and blood vessels appeared on the skeleton. There was also a heart in his chest. Finally, the skin covered the body. It formed a human being. A human that was exactly the same as Mo sure. This was Mo sure's virus clone. In the past, the virus clones could only be formed from the flesh and blood of infected people. But now, Mo sure could already induce the virus, and then make the virus quickly divide and replicate. In the end, a complete individual was formed. When the crowd saw Mo sure's method, they realized that he had created an exact replica of himself out of thin air. Furthermore, this person could blink and walk. It was no different from the main body. This made them all widen their eyes. What kind of godly method was this? However, this was only the beginning. Then, the second, the third, the fourth, the 100th. A total of 100 doppelgangers were formed. Everyone was dumbfounded. Creating a doppelganger out of thin air was already shocking enough. Now, he had actually created 100 doppelgangers. This was simply not something that a human could do. After that, Mo sure gave the order. Go. The 100 doppelgangers immediately jumped out of the large ice cave. Then, they randomly jumped into the caves on the walls of the ice cave. When the elders of the three major sects saw this, they all cried bitterly in their hearts. But they did not even dare to fart. Not to mention other things, just the method of creating 100 doppelgangers out of thin air was unheard of. In the face of such an expert, what else did they dare to say? Even if they knew that this expert was here for the crystal source ores, they did not dare to say anything. Mo sure controlled the 100 doppelgangers and entered the 100 caves around the ice cave. These caves, as a whole, went downwards. They went deeper and deeper. After walking for more than 500 meters, his doppelgangers discovered that crystal source ores began to appear on the ground. At first, there were not many crystal source ores. They only appeared on the walls occasionally. After walking for another 5 kilometers, there were more and more crystal source ores. There were already specks of crystal source ores on the walls, as many as the stars in the sky. After walking for more than 10 kilometers, there were even more crystal source ores. On the ground and on the ice walls on both sides. Furthermore, the top of his head was filled with crystal source ores. The crystal source ores emitted a fluorescent light, illuminating the entire cave green. Mo sure had read some information about crystal source ores before. However, those crystal source ores were basically within 1 cubic meter. If there were 10 crystal source ores, it would be considered a very high-quality crystal source ores. Now, these crystal source ores were basically all over the walls of the cave. This greatly surprised Mo sure. What was certain was that the crystal source ores here were not naturally formed. The caves here seemed to be man-made. The crystal source veins in this place were also artificially embedded in the surroundings. There were more than 1,000 caves here. He did not know how deep each cave was. If there were so many crystal source ores in each cave, then how many crystal source ores were there in the entire ice cave? Even the 3 great factions and the former dragon clan would not be able to take out such a huge amount of crystal source ores. What kind of person, what kind of faction would hide these crystal source ores here for? With such doubts in his mind, Mosher ordered each of his doppelgangers to use their dragon senses to explore the cave as they continued to walk forward. His doppelgangers walked along the crystal source ore's corridor. They continued to explore the cave with their dragon senses. After walking for about 50 kilometers, there seemed to be no change in the surroundings. However, at this time, all of Mosher's doppelgangers seemed to have reached the end of the cave 50 kilometers in front of them. Their dragon senses could no longer explore the cave. Mosher was puzzled. He clearly felt that there was still space in front of him, but his dragon senses could not explore it. This feeling was the same as when he used his dragon senses to explore the cave at Full Heart Waterfall. While puzzled, he controlled his doppelgangers and continued to move forward. However, after walking for about 10 kilometers, something strange happened. Almost all of his doppelgangers lost contact with him in an instant. It was as if there was suddenly no signal. Mosher could not help but be shocked. Chapter 493. The scene just now was very strange. Mosher's clones didn't detect any danger in the surroundings at all. But in an instant, he lost contact with these clones. It was like a phone suddenly losing its signal. Mosher frowned slightly. When the elders of the three major sects saw Mosher frown, their hearts trembled slightly. But before Mosher said anything, none of them dared to say anything to disturb Mosher. After a while, Mosher turned around and said to the elders of the three major sects, "Continue. You guys can continue." Then, he brought Happy and left the ice cave. He didn't know what kind of danger was in the ice cave. But losing contact with his clones just now made him feel uneasy. So he decided to leave this place for the time being. The three elders hurriedly lowered their heads and said, "Yes, yes." But when they came back to their senses, they all felt strange. Could it be that Island Master Mo didn't come for the crystal source ore? But if he came for the crystal source ore, why did he suddenly leave? The three elders looked at each other in dismay. But after a while, they suppressed the doubts in their hearts. Although they didn't know why Island Master Mo suddenly left, it was a good thing that he left. As long as Island Master Mo left, the crystal source ore here would be divided equally among the three major sections. No other forces would dare to fight with them. Of course, they also kept an eye on it. Maybe Island Master Mo's clones just now found something wrong down there. Not a single one of his 100 clones came back. It's very likely that there's some kind of danger down there. So it's best that we don't act rashly for the time being. Let's report this situation to the sects first and then make a decision. That's all we can do. Thus, the three of them reported what they had just encountered to the sect. When the higher-ups of the three major sects heard that they had encountered Island Master Mo, they attached great importance to this matter. They also heard that Island Master Mo had hurriedly left after sending his 100 clones down. This made them even more interested in the ice cave and even more vigilant. Therefore, they sent more people and brought more equipment and instruments to explore the ice cave. As for Mosher, he had already left North Pole Island with Happy. Continue to travel the world, see all the beautiful sceneries in the world, and taste all the delicacies in the world. His days were spent comfortably and comfortably. 2 months later, news from the three major sects arrived. All the ice caves collapsed. About 500 disciples of the three major sects were trapped in the ice cave. The three great sects hurriedly organized people to rescue him day and night. Finally, on the 5th day, they managed to rescue the disciples. Contrary to their expectations, none of these disciples died except for some minor injuries and excessive fright. After that, the three sects brought the disciples back to their sections. On one hand, they arranged for specialized doctors to treat them, and on the other hand, they arranged for a psychiatrist to intervene and treat them after the psychological creation. In the beginning, everything went smoothly. The injuries of these disciples were quickly healed. The disciples who were shocked gradually calmed down. But on this day, something unexpected happened. The disciples of the Flame Dawn ancient sect lived in an apartment. A female psychologist was counseling a disciple who had been overly shocked. She had a warm smile on her face and said, "Hifeng, you've almost fully recovered. Today is the last treatment. After today, you can cultivate and live normally." The disciple nodded. "Thank you for taking care of me during this time." The psychologist smiled and shook her head. "It's what I should do." As she spoke, she turned around and packed her clothes, intending to leave. However, when she had just put on her coat and turned around, she was shocked. Because Hifeng, who was sitting on the chair just now, had already arrived behind her. He was face to face with her. The two of them were less than an inch apart. Moreover, there was a hint of fiery light in Hifeng's eyes. The psychologist was slightly taken aback and asked, "Hifeng, it was fine if she didn't speak." When she said this, Hifeng's gaze became even more fervent. He suddenly reached out and grabbed the psychologist tightly. The psychologist repeatedly shouted, "Hifeng, this is not good. Let go of me, let go of me. If you don't let go, I'll scream." Only then did she understand that Hifeng already had ill intentions towards her. Hifeng ignored the psychologist's cries. His eyes flashed with a beast-like eagerness. He opened his mouth and bit down on the psychologist's neck. Hiss, this bite actually tore off a piece of flesh. The psychologist was in so much pain that she almost fainted. Her heart was filled with extreme fear. Just now, she thought that Hifeng was just going to do something beastly to her. She didn't expect this guy to become a real beast. "Help, help me," the psychologist screamed out in shock. A sharp and ear-piercing voice penetrated the door and echoed in the entire corridor. At the same time, she kept struggling. But her strength was far inferior to Hifeng's. She was tightly grabbed by Hifeng and couldn't escape at all. Crack, the door was kicked open. Two disciples of the Flame Dawn ancient sect barged in. When they saw the scene in front of them, they were also stunned. There was a bloody hole in the psychologist's neck that was constantly spurting out blood. Hifeng's mouth and chest were full of blood. It was easy to guess what he was doing. F***CK. "Hifeng, you son of a b***TCH, what are you doing?" "Hifeng, I'm going to beat you to death." The two disciples pounced on Hifeng. When Hifeng saw this, he suddenly turned around and faced the two disciples. The strength of these two disciples was about the same as Hifeng. They had both reached level 10. But now, Hifeng was fighting without any regard for his life. And he didn't attack like a human. Instead, he pounced and bit like a beast. These two disciples were actually forced to retreat. During the battle, Hifeng bit another disciple's wrist. That disciple felt the pain and hurriedly retreated. Just as they were fighting, the third disciple had already jumped in through the window. He picked up the psychiatrist and pulled her out of the room. At the same time, more than 10 disciples had already rushed over from the corridor. These disciples worked together and condensed a genetic martial art. After breaking Hifeng's 2 legs and 2 arms, they were able to control him. At this moment, they took a closer look at Hifeng. They saw that Hifeng's eyes had already turned black. The fingertips of his hands were actually more than an inch long and were extremely hard. 4 fangs had also grown out of his mouth. He looked very scary. Although his arms and legs were broken, he didn't seem to care at all. It continued to try to get up and open its mouth to bite the disciples around it. Chapter 494. Mo Shi continued to tour the continent happily. On the other hand, the number 1 sect of the Flaming Origin continent, the Flaming Origin Ancient Sect, was undergoing a drastic change. Hifeng was finally under control after biting 2 people in the Flaming Origin Ancient Sect. The other disciple took the opportunity to rescue the female psychiatrist. When they looked at Hifeng again, the area around his eyes had turned greenish-black. Sharp claws and fangs had grown out. He was like a wild beast, constantly roaring. When he looked at the surrounding disciples, his gaze was like that of a bloodthirsty beast. A few disciples hurriedly went to inform their superiors. However, when their superiors hurried over, another scream was heard from the other side. A few more disciples hurriedly rushed in the direction of the scream. They saw that the female psychologist who was bitten just now had a mouth full of blood. Her eyes had turned greenish-black. 2 half-inch sharp teeth were exposed at the corner of her mouth. Her fingernails were also more than an inch long. When she saw these humans, her gaze was like that of a wild beast. When the other disciples saw this, they hurriedly went forward and tried to control the female psychologist. However, at this moment, another scream was heard from the other side. It turned out that the disciple who had his finger bitten off by He Fong had also mutated. At the same time, in the Flaming Origin ancient sect, the disciples' apartments were filled with screams. Disciples were mutating everywhere. One had to know that there were more than 80 disciples who were trapped in the ice cave. Now, these 80 disciples suddenly mutated at the same time. The surrounding disciples were caught off guard and were either scratched or bitten. Then, they mutated one after another. The speed of mutation was not fast in the beginning. After being scratched, it would take more than 5 minutes for the mutation to take place. However, when the disciples who were scratched went to scratch others, the speed at which these people mutated became faster. The more people there were in the middle of the mutation, the faster the mutation speed. 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 1 minute. In less than 15 minutes, those who were scratched had their mutation speed reduced to 1 minute. When the higher-ups of the Flaming Origin ancient sect rushed over, more than 500 disciples had already been infected. When the elders of the Flaming Origin ancient sect saw this, they could only make up their minds and send out a wave of energy to kill these 500 disciples. After these 500 disciples were killed, all the remaining disciples fell silent. All of them wore pained expressions. Some of the disciples who were killed were their friends, while others were their brothers. Yet, there was nothing they could do. They could only watch as their friends and brothers died here. However, their bitter and sorrowful emotions did not last long before they were replaced by shock. The muscles on the bodies of the mutated disciples who had been blasted into pieces of flesh and blood were wriggling rapidly. The wound was healing rapidly. There were even 2 disciples who were blasted into meat paste, but at this time, the meat paste was flowing. Then, they quickly converged. The silhouette of a human began to emerge from the meat paste. When the surrounding people saw this, they were all terrified. The great elder shouted, "Everyone, step back." On the Flaming Origin continent, it wasn't rare for one to recover quickly after being injured. Even if some people were hit in the heart, they would be able to recover quickly in a short time. However, no matter who it was, as long as their head was blown off, there was basically no possibility of recovery. However, these 2 fellows had clearly been blasted into minced meat, yet they were still able to revive. How could this not make the crowd panic? The Great Elder, as a level 4 Grand Desolate Master, was unable to kill these 2 fellows. Moreover, it wasn't just these 2 fellows. The other mutated disciples who had just been blasted to death slowly stood up at this time. Seeing this, the Great Elder could only wave his right hand and condense an energy light shield. These mutated disciples were all shrouded in it. Those mutated disciples rushed towards the light shield one after another. However, the light shield did not move at all. Only then did the surrounding disciples let out a sigh of relief. At this moment, the other elders had also rushed over. After they understood the situation, they all began to speculate. Are they infected with some kind of virus? Is it the zombie virus? It doesn't seem like it. The zombie virus's infectivity is not so terrifying. Then what kind of virus is it? This needs to be carefully studied. After a simple discussion, they found a few virus specialists in the sect. The virus specialists put on their energy protective suits. This kind of energy protective suit had an outer and inner layer that was a normal physical protective suit. The interlayer in the middle was a layer of energy. This kind of energy was very good at isolating viruses. Basically, there was no known virus that could break through this kind of energy protective suit. After that, the Great Elder used the energy again to blast the mutated disciples within the light shield. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the two disciples carefully passed through the light shield and entered the range of the virus. They planned to collect some virus samples. However, at this time, Sanguisurincus suddenly grew out of the blood on the ground. These Sanguisurincus seemed to be alive. They slowly climbed along the legs of the two experts, climbed up their energy protective suits, and climbed up their bodies. The two of them were not panicked at first. After all, they were wearing energy protective suits. However, soon, their faces revealed a look of horror. They saw that on these Sanguisurincus, there were many small spikes. These spikes were constantly stabbing the protective suits. There were many small holes in the protective suits. The Great Elder who was outside was shocked. These protective suits were all made of special materials. The protective properties were extremely good. Even knives and swords could not cut open a crack. Now, the spikes on these Sanguisurincus could actually pierce through the protective suits. He quickly shouted, "Both of you, get out of here." The two disciples hurriedly retreated out of the light shield. Just as they were retreating out of the light shield, the energy in the energy protective suits kept leaking out through the hundreds and thousands of small holes. When they reached the edge of the light shield, the energy in their protective suits had completely leaked out. At this time, the Sanguisurincus entangled their bodies again. The spikes kept stabbing their protective suits. The protective suit was easily pierced through as if it was made of paper. The two of them suddenly screamed in horror and pain. No. However, no matter how loudly they screamed, even if their elders were close by, they could not save them. On the contrary, the Great Elder saw that the two of them were beyond saving and raised his right hand. In his right hand, a mass of energy had already condensed. "Great Elder, what are you doing?" "Great Elder, please, I can still be saved." Boom! In the midst of their pleas, the two of them had already turned into two piles of blood. Chapter 495. The two disciples of the Ancient Flame sect had been killed by their Grand Elder. The other disciples in the surroundings were all extremely shocked. Although they knew that the Grand Elder had no choice but to do so. If the two disciples had escaped, it would have caused more casualties. It was obvious that they had been infected with some kind of virus. The Grand Elder had finally managed to control the virus with the energy shield. If they had escaped, it would not have been so easy to control them again. At the same time, the Ancient Dragon sect, which was ranked second on the Flaming Dawn continent, was experiencing the same thing. In the end, their sect master had used a similar method to trap the virus. The Mystic Moon sect, which was ranked third, was also experiencing the same outbreak. The sect master of the Mystic Moon sect had used the same method to control the virus. However, she had only used the energy shield to control the virus. Within the energy shield, the infected disciples had been killed countless times, but they were still able to survive. This caused everyone present to be extremely terrified. They reported this situation to the island masters of the various hunting islands on the continent. After watching the video of the scene, the island masters fell silent. Some of the island masters even had a trace of fear in their eyes. Viruses had always existed on the Flaming Dawn continent, especially on the hunting islands. The island masters of the hunting islands had developed all kinds of viruses in order to allow the creatures on the hunting grounds to continue to mutate. The most typical ones were the zombie virus, vampire virus, and werewolf virus. Among these four viruses, the zombie virus spread the fastest and was the most destructive. Therefore, all the island masters of the hunting islands strictly controlled these viruses. However, no matter how powerful a virus was, it could always kill its host. As long as the host of the virus was killed, the transmission of the virus would be greatly reduced. However, this new virus could not be killed at all. Not only could it not be killed, but it also consumed a lot of energy to maintain the energy shield. Once the energy supply ran out, the shield could break at any time, causing the virus to flow out again. Many research institutions on the hunting islands brought many professional instruments to the three sects to study these viruses. Although the virus could not be brought out of the shield, they could extend the instruments into the shield to investigate. In the end, after 3 days of research, they came to a conclusion. This virus was the zombie virus. However, it was not the traditional zombie virus, but a mutated one. They called it the new zombie virus. These new zombie viruses had a stronger ability to spread and were very difficult to kill. Therefore, the three major sects agreed to let the virus research institutions of the hunting islands stay in their sects to study the zombie virus. However, just 5 days later, the situation changed again. On the 5th day, faint green spots began to appear on the skin of these researchers. Especially around their eyes, dark circles began to appear. At first, they didn't pay much attention to it, thinking that it was just because they had stayed up late to work. But later, as time passed, more and more green spots appeared on their bodies, and they were getting bigger and bigger. They finally panicked. After a virus test, a new type of zombie virus was detected from their bodies. This filled the hearts of these staff members with despair. They had watched the videos about the new zombie virus and knew what happened to those infected with the new zombie virus. They didn't want to die. However, if they did not enter the light barrier, once their bodies were completely controlled by the virus, they would lose their consciousness and attack humans like wild beasts. Thus, after some hesitation, some virus researchers reported this matter to the higher-ups of the three major sections. At the same time, they did some research on the virus in their bodies. In the end, they came to a frightening conclusion: the new zombie virus could be spread through the air. The zombie virus was very scary, but it was only spread through contact. And this new zombie virus could actually be spread through the air. In other words, everyone who went to the North Pole Island could have been infected. And now, all the disciples of the three major sects could have been infected. This discovery caused the three major sects to be extremely panicked. They hurriedly organized their disciples to conduct a virus test. As a result, 30% of the disciples of the three major sects were infected. It must be known that the three major sects had more than 1 million disciples combined. 30% of the disciples were infected, which meant that more than 300,000 disciples had been infected. Moreover, although the rest of the disciples were not infected, the virus could be spread through the air. Therefore, every second they stayed in the sects increased their chances of being infected. Thus, the disciples of the three major sects who were not infected began to flee the three major sections. Although the higher-ups of the sects knew about this, they couldn't stop them. If they didn't let them escape, were they supposed to let them stay here and be infected? At this time, the three major sects could only place their hopes on those research groups. Unfortunately, the research groups held a pessimistic attitude toward the new zombie virus. Many researchers had already entered the energy barrier on their own. This was tantamount to suicide. However, there were also a small number of virus researchers who found an opportunity to escape the three major sections. Without a doubt, these researchers had all been infected by the virus. If they escaped from the three major sects, the consequences would be unimaginable. Although the three major sects did their utmost to search for them, there were still 5 fish that escaped the net in the end. No one knew where they had fled to. The several hundred researchers who had been captured could only forcibly send them into the energy barrier. Previously, they had made a lot of contributions and sacrifices in order to research the virus. But now, if they were to leave, the whole continent might be in huge trouble. This was the truth. Although they couldn't bear it, they still had to send them into the energy barrier. However, although the three major sects barely managed to control the situation, they weren't the only ones who had entered the ice cave at that time. On the North Pole Island, many gold diggers had entered the ice cave. Even those who hadn't been to the ice cave had gone to the edge of the ice cave. And these people had basically all been infected by the new zombie virus. Therefore, this was a huge hidden danger. Although the three major sects thought of many methods, it was useless. In the end, they could only release a joint announcement to the world. Joint announcement from the Ancient Flame Sect, Ancient Dragon Sect, and Mystic Moon Female Sect. A new zombie virus has entered the Flaming Continent. This virus can be transmitted through the air and through contact. Remind everyone on the Flaming Continent to prepare a gas mask. If you encounter a person with a green body, black eye circles, fangs, and sharp claws, run away as soon as possible. Don't try to kill them, because they can't be killed. Chapter 496. This joint announcement caused an uproar in the entire Flaming Land. Although the three sects were very domineering most of the time, they would find some high-sounding reasons to do things. But for such a big event to be jointly announced by the three sects, it couldn't be fake. For a time, the entire Flaming Land was in a state of panic. All the major forces began to seal their gates. All the hunting islands began to seal their islands. Although it would cost a lot. But compared to human lives, no matter how big the price, it was not worth mentioning. After contacting the three sects and confirming the authenticity of the incident, the government also began to seal the roads and cities. Even the government confirmed that it was true, so the people naturally knew that it couldn't be fake. Therefore, all the gas masks in the shopping malls and shops were sold out. As cultivators, many people could hold their breath for a long time. Even after becoming a hunter, it was not difficult to hold their breath for a month. But no one could hold their breath forever. So people were crazily fighting for gas masks. And all the manufacturers of gas masks were also speeding up the production of gas masks. Many manufacturers that did not produce gas masks in the past also opened many gas mask production lines. But even so, it was far from enough for everyone to buy a gas mask. After all, the population of the Flaming Land was as high as 50 trillion. The daily production of gas masks in the Flaming Land was only a little more than 100,000. This was because almost everyone in the Flaming Land was a cultivator. Most of the time, if they encountered a special situation, they could survive by holding their breath. There was no need to use gas masks. Only those who worked in poisonous gas all year round could use gas masks. While people were crazily fighting for gas masks. In a remote mountain village. One night, a disciple who had escaped from the Flaming Land ancient sect sneaked in. In the middle of the night, there was a burst of screams in the village. This scream woke up all the villagers in the village. What followed was more than half an hour of screams. Half an hour later, the village fell into silence. All the villagers fell into a pool of blood. The next morning, many zombies appeared in the village. All of them had green faces and fangs. Their eyes were dead. Then, they ran in all directions. These zombies were not as stupid as zombies. Among these zombies, even the lowest level zombies were transformed from hunters. Therefore, not only were they very strong, but their intelligence was also higher than normal humans. Of course, the most terrifying thing was that they couldn't be killed at all. Even a grand desolate master would not be able to do anything to them. Left with no other choice, they could only resort to methods that they had no other choice. That was nuclear weapons. After confirming that there was no one in a certain place, they would use nuclear flattening on those places. As a result, many places on the Flaming Dawn continent were devastated. When the people on Hunting Island No. 1 heard about this, they all felt a sense of familiarity. They had experienced such an apocalyptic world back on Earth. What was happening on the Flaming Dawn continent was nothing more than a reenactment of the apocalypse on Earth. As for the fact that the virus could not be killed, they were not worried. Their dragon master, Mr. Mo, had brought them all the way from Earth. In less than 3 years, they had reached the peak of the Flaming Origin continent. No matter how ferocious the virus was, the Dragon Lord would be able to resolve it for them. As for Mo, sure, he had a strange feeling. He felt that it was very ironic. Of course, it was not ironic to himself, but to the humans on the Flaming Dawn continent. The people on the Flaming Dawn continent treated each planet as a hunting ground and threw the virus on these planets. Then they hunted the creatures on these hunting grounds. Now, the zombie virus had also appeared on the Flaming Dawn continent. The Flaming Dawn continent had also fallen into an apocalyptic disaster. It was really the cycle of the heavens and retribution. However, he was also thinking about how these viruses had come about. Could it be that creatures from a higher dimension had thrown these viruses onto the Flaming Dawn continent? Of course, Mo Shi's idea was just his wild guess. He still had to take a look at these viruses. He had to see where these viruses came from. So on this day, he came to the known origin of the viruses, North Pole Island. He hovered above North Pole Island and used his dragon sense to investigate below. He saw that the entire North Pole city was almost filled with zombies. The people living here were the first to be infected. There used to be more than 50,000 people living on North Pole Island. Now, there were more than 50,000 new zombies here. He used the demon dragon's eye to look at these zombies, and the attributes of these zombies quickly appeared in his mind. Species, General Corpse, Level 3 General Corpse, equivalent to Level 3 Scavenger, Special Ability, Immortality. Mo Shi was a little confused. What was a General Corpse? The system's voice sounded frowny face one of the 4 great zombie ancestors, Jianghu. The zombies infected by him are called General Corpses. General Corpses have the trait of immortality, so they are also called immortal corpses. Hearing this, Mo Shi's heart skipped a beat. Once, when he was on Earth, he had seen an owl. At first, he thought that the owl had been infected with the zombie virus. But later, he found that the owl could not be killed. At that time, when he used the demon blood's eye to look, he found that the owl had the heart of Jianghu and could not be killed. He did not expect to encounter zombies infected by Jianghu after coming to the Flaming Dawn continent. Mo Shi pondered for a moment and planned to use memory plunder to check the memories of these zombies. He wanted to see where they came from. However, under his investigation, he found that the memories of these zombies were completely chaotic. He could not find anything. Mo Shi did not investigate further. With a thought, he said in his mind, "System, select the reward check-in and sign in the demon-suppressing orb." The system's voice quickly sounded, "This check-in will consume 1.5 million evolution points. Confirm check-in." Mo Shi glanced at the balance of evolution points in his mind. He saw that behind the 3 words evolution points was a long string of numbers. As for how many trillions of evolution points there were, he was too lazy to count. Ever since he came to the Flaming Dawn continent, evolution points were rarely used. But as long as he killed infected creatures, he would always receive the corresponding evolution points. Confirm check-in. Mo Shi said. Soon, a walnut-sized orb appeared in his backpack. This bead was sparkling and translucent. It was an orb nurtured by the dragon's body and was full of righteousness. A single orb could suppress 10,000 demons. Mo Shi had used it once in the vampire's lair on Earth. After that, because it consumed too many evolution points, he never used it again. Today, he would try to see if this demon-suppressing orb was still as powerful when it encountered a general corpse. Chapter 497. With a thought, Mo Shi took out the demon-suppressing orb from his system backpack. The orb's surface looked crystal clear. But if one looked closely, they would find that it contained some kind of extremely violent energy. This kind of energy was very unfamiliar to Mo Shi. It was not like the energy in human cultivators' bodies. It was also not like the energy in zombies, or desolate beasts' bodies. At this moment, the zombies below also noticed Mo Shi in the sky. They immediately jumped into the air. These general corpses could not fly, but they could all jump very high. Even the lowest level 1 general corpse could jump up to more than 10 meters high. As for the mutated general corpses, which were equivalent to desolate hunters, they could jump up to 100 meters high. Mo Shi slightly increased his altitude. He let himself reach a height of more than 700 meters. These general corpses would no longer be able to reach him. Then, he held the demon-suppressing orb in his right hand. At a certain moment, his right index finger and thumb loosened. The demon-suppressing orb quietly fell. As the general corpses around it kept jumping up, it quietly fell from the middle of these general corpses as if it was weightless. Some general corpses also noticed the falling orb. They pounced straight at the orb. They reached out to grab the orb. However, after the orb fell into their hands, it was not affected at all. And their hands were like snow meeting burning charcoal. A hole was melted in their hands. A few more general corpses pounced over. But these general corpses' bodies were all pierced through by the orb. This orb seemed to be falling gently. However, nothing could affect its whereabouts. A moment later, it slowly landed. The next moment, a blood-red light instantly burst out from within the orb. This blood-red light was extremely dazzling. Everything within a 10-kilometer radius had turned into a blood-red world. There was no sound, only the blood-red color that filled all the space. A moment later, the blood-red color disappeared. And half of all the general corpses within 10 kilometers disappeared. The general corpses 10 kilometers away only saw the sudden appearance of the red light. A moment later, the red light disappeared. Their kind had already disappeared without a trace. It was as if they had never appeared in this world. Each and every one of them was greatly shocked. These corpse generals seemed to only know how to run around like headless flies. But that was because they couldn't be killed. Therefore, they were fearless and pressed forward courageously. However, one had to know that their IQ was higher than that of normal humans. How could they not be alarmed when they suddenly saw their companion disappear so inexplicably? Overwhelmed with fear, the corpse generals began to flee in all directions. When Wuxia saw this, he couldn't help but shake his head. A general corpse was nothing more than this. Actually, it wasn't that the general corpse wasn't powerful. Wuxia's demon-suppressing orb was simply too powerful. At this moment, Wuxia looked into his mind. The kill points in his mind had already reached 4 billion. As long as he could get 6 billion kill points, he would be promoted to a level 10 Desolate Hunter. This meant that if he killed ordinary general corpses, he would only get 1 kill point for every 10 general corpses. But don't forget that many parts of the continent have been infected. Moreover, judging from the rate at which the zombie virus was spreading, it would probably spread across the entire continent very soon. There were hundreds of billions of Desolate Hunters on the entire continent. Therefore, it wouldn't be difficult for him to become a level 10 Desolate Hunter. However, Wuxia didn't want the entire continent to be infected by the virus. If the entire continent was infected by the virus, even if he eliminated all the virus in the end, there would only be a few people left on Hunting Island 1. What was the point? At this moment, Wuxia looked down at the general corpses that were fleeing in all directions. He wasn't too satisfied with the attack range of the demon-suppressing orb. His draconic will moved and blasted at the general corpses. Boom 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 boom. The general corpses all exploded. But in just a moment, the general corpses recovered to their original state. Wuxia shook his head slightly. In the past, whether it was the zombie virus or other viruses, his draconic will could suppress their recovery ability. But now, it seemed that his draconic will had no effect on the zombie virus. He could only ask in his mind, "System, can the demon-suppressing orb be upgraded?" The system's voice replied frowny face yes, but after the upgrade, the evolution points required for each check-in will increase by 10 times. Wuxia nodded, then upgrade it. Soon, the system's voice sounded frowny face upgrade successful. After the upgrade, each designated check-in will consume 15 million evolution points. Wuxia looked at the evolution points in his mind. There were so many that he felt it was just a string of numbers. He said, "System, designate the demon-suppressing orb to check-in." Check-in successful. Check-in reward, 1 demon-suppressing orb. Wuxia moved his mind and took out the upgraded demon-suppressing orb from his backpack. The upgraded demon-suppressing orb was no longer the size of a walnut. Instead, it was the size of a fist. He narrowed his eyes and carefully sensed it. The energy contained in this demon-suppressing orb was dozens of times more powerful than the previous demon-suppressing orb. Mo Shi let go of his hand gently. The demon-suppressing orb was still like rain, slowly falling. After a moment, it landed gently. The moment it landed, a dazzling red light appeared again. But this time, the range of the dazzling red light expanded by 10 times. Within a radius of 100 kilometers, all infected humans and animals were instantly annihilated in this red light. When the red light disappeared, this world of ice and snow seemed so clean and clear. There was not a trace of impurities. Mo Shi looked down at this world wrapped in silver and snow and shook his head slightly. The world here was supposed to be like this. He moved his mind and instantly teleported to the edge of the ice cave. He saw that the ice cave had already collapsed. Only a huge ice cave with a radius of more than 10 kilometers was left. Mo Shi used his dragon will to carefully investigate this place, but he did not find anything else. He paused for a moment before rushing in the direction of the first hunting island. The first hunting island had the support of the Dragon Palace. Its current defense could defend against attacks below the Grand Desolate Master level. But these general corpses were immortal. Even the defense of the Dragon Palace could not destroy those immortal general corpses. From what Mo Shi knew, it seemed that only the demon-suppressing orb could destroy those immortal general corpses. Of course, he had not tried the dragon-slaying saber, nor had he tried other methods. But no matter how strong the other methods were, it was still his personal ability. And if the entire continent was infected, and only the first hunting island was not infected in the end, countless general corpses would swarm towards the first hunting island. Then, no matter how strong his personal ability was, it would be impossible for him to stop the almost endless general corpses. Therefore, he had to sign in more demon-suppressing orbs. And, other than that, he had to think of other ways. Chapter 498. Mo Shi returned to hunting island number 1. Every day, he would sign in, and sign in again. He had 2 sign-in opportunities a day to sign in the demon-suppressing orb. Then, he would distribute these demon-suppressing orbs to the people in the base, telling them that they could only use them when they were attacked by the infected. At the same time, Mo Shi was also constantly paying attention to the new developments of the zombie virus on the continent. Official news, June 1st. A new zombie virus appeared in 3 states. June 2nd. A new zombie virus appeared in the 4th state. June 5th. A new zombie virus appeared in the 5th state. June 10th. A new zombie virus appeared in 7 states. The new virus can be spread through the air, and the new zombies can't be killed. All citizens are advised to wear a gas mask and hide in a safe place as soon as possible when encountering the new zombie. Do not have any contact with the new zombie. June 12th. Some people had already escaped to other planets on spaceships. But resources were limited. At present, only those who passed the test of the new zombie virus and reached the level of a hunter or above could escape to other planets on spaceships. Mo Shi looked at the shocking reports in these places. Looking at the map of the flaming beginning continent, at first, only a few states had a few red dots. Gradually, more and more red dots appeared in these places. Red dots appeared in other states one after another. He remembered a game he played when he was on Earth. Plague Incorporated. The changes in the map in front of him were very similar to the scene in Plague Incorporated. Plague Incorporated. In the end, the humans on Earth were almost extinct. And the map of the entire Earth turned blood red. Seeing this, Mo Shi's mood was also very low. Although he was not a saint and did not have to grieve for the death of everyone. But if all the humans in this world died, even if he survived, there would be no meaning in living. In fact, he had thought about using the demon-suppressing orb to destroy all the zombies in the places where there were zombies when the virus first broke out. But the virus spread too quickly. And he could only sign in at most 2 demon-suppressing orbs a day. And the flaming beginning continent was too big. Even if he kept teleporting to these places, it would be too late to stop it. In the flaming beginning ancient sect, several elders in the sect used their powerful strength to trap the virus in an energy shield. But that was all. Most of their disciples had already left. Only the desolate hunters and above were left. They planned to send the disciples who were desolate hunters and above onto the spaceship and let them escape to other planets. At the very least, they wanted to preserve the bloodline of the ancient flame sect. However, the elders couldn't make such a decision. They had to ask the sect master to make a decision. Even after such a huge incident, the sect master still hadn't appeared. This was because the sect master had already said before his seclusion that this seclusion was related to whether or not he could break through to become a level 10 Grand Desolate Master. Unless the sky is falling, do not disturb him. But now, the entire Flaming Dawn continent was facing extinction. Wasn't this equivalent to the sky collapsing? A total of 10 elders arrived at the Universe Tower where the ancient flame sect leader was in seclusion. They pondered for a long time. The first elder turned his head and looked at the other elders. Finally, he raised his head and looked at the Universe Tower. He bowed deeply and said with a long voice, "The flame-beginning continent is facing destruction, and so is the flame-beginning ancient sect. Sect Master, please come out of seclusion and save the disciples of the Flame Dawn ancient sect." The other 9 elders also knelt down at the same time. They said in unison, "The flame-beginning continent is facing destruction, and so is the Flame Dawn ancient sect. Sect Master, please come out of seclusion and save the disciples of the Flame Dawn ancient sect." After saying that, the 10 elders knelt on the ground again. The elders looked at each other. They didn't know what to do. In the end, the first elder knelt down again. He repeated it once more. The rest of the elders repeated the same thing. However, there was still no response from the Universe Tower. After a long time, the elders looked at each other. In the end, it was the first elder who knelt down again and spoke again. The rest of the elders followed the great elder's lead and bowed again, repeating their previous words. This time, as soon as they finished speaking, the door of the Universe Tower shattered with a loud bang. It was as if a train had crashed through from the inside. Gravel flew in all directions. The elders were all shocked. However, none of them dared to use their energy to block or dodge. They could only let the gravel hit their bodies. When the gravel stopped flying, the smoke and dust dissipated. A figure emerged from the Jianghu Tower. This figure wasn't the Flame Dawn ancient sect master. Instead, it was a lowly about 14 or 15 years old. She had 2 ponytails and was dressed in JK attire. She had a pair of big, watery eyes that could make people sink in. She had a cute face, and anyone who saw her would want to take a look at her. At this moment, she was looking at her surroundings with a pair of big, curious eyes like a curious baby. The 10 elders were all shocked when they saw this. Then, the first elder came to his senses and pointed at the lowly with his right hand. "Who are you? How dare you trespass into the forbidden area of the Flame Dawn ancient sect?" The lowly looked around and carefully identified the 10 elders. Then, she cursed angrily with a face full of anger. "Damn it, you old fogies. It's all because of you that I became like this. I'll stew you and feed you to the dogs." The faces of the 10 elders were filled with shock and anger. However, when they heard this, they all trembled. The first elder swallowed his saliva and asked tentatively, "Sect Master?" The lowly cursed angrily. "Nonsense, if it's not me, who else can it be?" When the first elder heard this, he immediately knelt on the ground. His eyes were full of fear. The other elders also knelt on the ground at the same time. "Welcome back, Sect Master. Welcome back, Sect Master." The lowly pointed at the 10 elders who were kneeling on the ground and cursed. "Come out. Come out, your sister. I was going to break through to a level 10 Grand Desolate Master and reach a higher realm. If I want to reach a higher realm, I have to use my consciousness to traverse space. When traversing space, my consciousness will be attached to the people in the other space. As long as I traverse space 81 times, I will be able to break through and reach a higher realm. I've already traversed space 79 times. I only need 2 more. Damn it, you guys messed up my traversing. Now, my body has traversed to another space, and my consciousness has brought this body back. Are you satisfied? When the elders heard this, they were all sweating profusely. How could such a thing happen? However, the actions of the person in front of them were undoubtedly their sect master. In his anger, the sect master looked at the sky. He sighed. Sigh, it's all my dead father's fault. Of all the names he could give me, he actually called me Luoli. Now, I'm really a lowly. Damn it. Chapter 499. The sect master of the Ancient Flames sect had always been like this. He would curse first. After cursing, he would think about how to solve the problem. The 10 elders knew that the sect master was like this, so when the sect master cursed, none of them made a sound. They all listened quietly. 5 minutes later, the sect master finished cursing, and the first elder spoke. Sect master, we have disturbed your breakthrough and caused you to become like this. We are all very guilty. No matter what you want to do with us, we won't dare to complain. But there is something urgent that needs to be solved. Sect Master Raleigh's mouth was dry from all the cursing. He directly spread his legs and sat on the steps in front of the Jianghu Tower. He said, if you have something to say it quickly. Once you are done, I will go back and find a way to get my original body back. The first elder couldn't help but twitch his eyes. Because when the sect master sat, the first elder could see the sect master's body from his position. He couldn't help but want to remind the sect master that he was exposed. But after thinking about it, he held back. He said, Sect master, there is a new zombie virus that is very powerful. Not only does it spread quickly through the air, but the virus can't be killed with the current methods of the flaming origin continent. It has a trend of becoming a pandemic. The major sects have already transferred their disciples above the desolate hunter realm to other planets. I've discussed with a few elders, and we've decided to transfer some of our disciples to other planets. But this is a serious matter, and we have to get the sect master's permission. That is why we have disturbed the sect master's breakthrough. Raleigh heard this and had a look of disdain. He cursed, what are you elders doing? Our Ancient Flames sect is the #1 sect in the world, and we have a deep foundation. Can't you even deal with a small virus? Do you still need to escape to other planets? Don't you know that the flaming origin continent is the most suitable planet for us to live on and has the most resources? The elders lowered their heads and didn't dare to answer. Only the first elder mustered the courage to speak. We are incompetent. Sect master, if you have a way to deal with the new zombie virus, please do it and save the disciples of the Ancient Flames sect from the abyss of suffering. Lori tossed the ponytail on his shoulder to the back and said, it's just a small matter, yet you still need this sect master to personally take action. I'm so tired of being the sect master. Let's go, take me there. As he spoke, he stood up. However, when she stood up, her ponytail slid down her shoulders again. Lori impatiently flung him behind him and scolded, that's right. F***CKU. When the elders saw this, they wanted to laugh but did not dare to. He could only forcefully hold it in. The first elder heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that the sect master had finally stood up. Finally, he didn't have to look up to see Fat too. Soon, they arrived before the light barrier with Luoli. Luoli saw that there were already more than 50 disciples within the light barrier. The faces of the disciples turned pale. There were thick dark circles around his eyes. All of them had green faces and fangs, looking very frightening. When they saw Luoli coming over, they all rushed towards him through the light shield. Although it was blocked by the light barrier, it still looked very scary. The first elder next to him explained, they are all infected with the new zombie virus and can't be killed at all. No matter if it's physical, energy, or any other means, even if their heads are blown up, they can recover in a short time. When Luoli heard this, he flung his ponytail behind him and said, F***ck, such a powerful virus? Let me try. As she spoke, a ball of fiery red energy condensed in her hands. She waved this energy out. This ball of energy entered the light barrier. As soon as it entered the light barrier, it exploded. The glaring red light made almost everyone present feel as if they were blinded in an instant. However, this explosion did not make any sound. It was like watching a star explode in the universe. It looked very powerful, but no sound could be heard. When the red light gradually faded, everyone's vision returned to normal. At this moment, when they looked inside the light barrier again, there were no longer any green-faced disciples with fangs. There was nothing there. When the first elders saw this, they were all shocked. They had tried all kinds of methods these days, but they couldn't do anything about the zombie virus. Now, the sect leader just casually waved a ball of energy and completely destroyed those zombies. What kind of strength did the sect leader have? Sect leader Luoli seemed to have seen through everyone's doubts. She waved her hand impatiently and said, when you're lucky enough to be as strong as me, you'll naturally know. There's nothing to be surprised about. The most important thing now is to quickly summon all the disciples back. I went into seclusion and all of you killed all the disciples of my ancient flame sect. F***ck. When the first elders heard this, they nodded. Yes, sect leader. Next, Luoli used the energy to cleanse the entire ancient flame sect. This scene made everyone's eyes widen. The first elder was a level 6 Grand Desolate Master, but he could only use the energy barrier to cover a radius of a few kilometers. However, the sect leader used the energy to cleanse the entire ancient flame sect. One had to know that the mountain where the ancient flame sect was located on was at least 100 kilometers wide. This was the difference between them. Next, the disciples of the ancient flame sect received the news and returned to the ancient flame sect. When the rest of the people heard the news, they quickly gathered around the ancient flame sect. They weren't disciples of the ancient flame sect and couldn't go up the mountain. However, in the entire continent, only the sect leader of the ancient flame sect could eliminate the virus. Therefore, it would be safer for them to stay near the flame-beginning ancient sect than anywhere else. Gradually, the disciples of the other factions who were unable to ride a flying ship started to gather around the Flame Dawn ancient sect. In an instant, there were tens of millions of people within 100 kilometers of the ancient flame sect. Gradually, the news spread far and wide. Even many people from other prefectures rushed to the ancient flame sect when they heard the news. After hearing this news, Mo Sure was also somewhat puzzled in his heart. How did the sect leader of the ancient flame sect kill the corpse general virus? However, it was still a good thing that there was someone who could kill the corpse general virus. However, the sect leader of the ancient flame sect and Mo Sure were far from enough. The number of infected people on the continent was still increasing rapidly. The map of the continent was also turning red. You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.